Chapter 1317. At the border of the Z-Way and Red Phoenix Star regions, the battle between the Imperial Dao and Red Phoenix Star regions spread for 30,000 miles. This was the most intense battle between the human and demon realms. All the top forces were used, and millions of soldiers covered the sky. At the center of the battle, knowing destiny gathered all his power. His blood-stained white hair danced in the wind, making him look like a demon. Evil chi surged everywhere in the Red Phoenix Star region. Thousands of creatures that died in the demonic tribulation didn't die. Their resentment filled the sky. It was a shocking scene. The kings looked at the sky, and their hearts were in turmoil. What happened? 4 immortal slaying swords. In the starry sky, First Demon Emperor Kun felt the terrifying sword pressure from afar. He looked at the evil clouds in the sky, and his expression darkened. This feeling was too familiar. In the ancient times, the heavenly demons suffered a great loss because of these 4 swords, especially the strongest immortal slaying sword. It was called the number 1 immortal artifact in the world. The master of the Eastern Celestial World once killed 9 demon kings with this sword, causing the heavenly demons to be unable to recover even after hundreds of thousands of years. It could be said that without the 4 immortal slaying swords, the 4 immortal realms wouldn't have been at their peak. The primordial demons wouldn't have lost so badly in the ancient war. The familiar aura appeared again. Murderous intent flashed in First Demon Emperor Kun's eyes. He crossed his hands, and chaotic demonic chi surged and condensed. In the next moment, a terrifying pressure swept out. A huge death scythe appeared in First Demon Emperor Kun's hand. It was as black as ink and cold to the bone. The peerless demonic artifact reappeared in the world after hundreds of thousands of years. First Demon Emperor Kun's aura rose rapidly as he gathered all his power. With a powerful enemy in front of him, the heavenly Demon Emperor Kun unleashed all his power. He didn't dare to be careless. Evil chi formed clouds in the sky and kept rolling. An extremely heavy aura pressed down, making it difficult to breathe. In the evil clouds, 4 immortal swords were faintly visible. They were mottled and broken. During the ancient war, the immortal realm collapsed, and the 4 immortal swords were also damaged. Now that they were gathered, their power was still shocking. Below, the white-haired figure in plain clothes stood in the sky. The flame mark between his eyebrows shone brightly. He was like a divine king, and his battle intent was shocking. The final battle had arrived. Knowing destiny unleashed his last trump card. The 4 celestial swords appeared at the same time. Refined by the resentment of billions of creatures for more than 10 years, the 4 celestial swords rose to the sky and vaguely reappeared the power of the ancient times. Strong, so strong that it was indisputable. This was a life and death battle between the 2 most powerful people in the human world and the demon world. Before the battle even began, the starry sky within 1,000,000 miles began to shake violently. All troops, retreat 50,000 kilometers. In front of the armies of the 2 realms, a king ordered a retreat of 100,000 li. With this order, the 1,000,000-strong army immediately retreated, temporarily avoiding the brunt of the battle. 50,000 kilometers away, the 2 armies stopped. Everyone looked at the battle in front of them, feeling very nervous. Everyone knew that the outcome of this battle would likely determine the outcome of the war between the 2 realms. Neither the human race nor the demon realm could afford to lose. Below the clouds of resentment, Ning Chen clenched his fists. Instantly, the clouds of resentment surged as the immortal slaying and immortal slaughtering swords trembled and slowly descended. With the world's suppressing sword of the Eastern and Western immortal world in his hand, Ning Chen's body surged with killing intent. The resentment of all living beings was added to his body. His divinity transformed and his demonic nature became overwhelming. "Demon body, come with us," Ning Chen said calmly. As soon as he said that, demonic chi surged between heaven and earth. The sleeping demon body seemed to have sensed it and released its power to help the 2 bodies. As the demonic chi merged, the divine flame mark between Ning Chen's eyebrows turned black. Demonic patterns appeared vaguely, extremely powerful. With the power of the 3 bodies gathered, Ning Chen's cultivation rose again. Suddenly, A power that surpassed the limits of the human world shot up into the sky. In an unknown space, an ancient gate appeared. The power of the three bodies clashed, and the celestial gate that had never been opened rumbled. A crack appeared, and celestial light spilled out, sprinkling on the knowing destiny body. This is... In front, Demon Emperor Kun looked at the sky with a heavy expression. The ancient mystic realm. With the celestial light on him, Ning Chen's aura rose to the extreme. His combat ability reached the peak again. 100,000 miles away, Qing Ning looked at the plain-clothed man in front of her. Light kept flashing in her eyes. In the past 100 years, he had become stronger and stronger. He was so strong that it was unbelievable. He was strong enough to carry the entire human race. For a mortal to go against a celestial was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Today, perhaps the legend would be broken. Humans could go against the heavens and change their fate. The terrifying knowing destiny Marquis. Luo Xingchen couldn't suppress the waves in his heart. It was already difficult for them to reach such heights. They had known each other for 100 years, so they knew the knowing destiny Marquis best. It was extremely difficult for a mortal to grow to where he was today. Every bit of combat ability he had now was exchanged with the blood of the knowing destiny Marquis. The knowing destiny Marquis said that the luckiest thing in a person's life was to be rewarded with hard work. If you encounter one or two, you must try your best to seize it. In times of despair, work harder, and maybe hope will appear. Today, the hope of the human race finally appeared. Boom! Thunder rumbled between heaven and earth. Endless thunder struck the knowing destiny Marquis under the resentful cloud. At this moment, it couldn't hurt the swordsman at all. With the three bodies gathered and the four swords in the sky, the knowing destiny Marquis combat ability reached its peak in 100 years. In the next moment, Ning Chen stepped forward in the starry sky. His white hair fluttered, and he disappeared instantly. Fast, unbelievably fast. The monarchs of the two realms didn't even see how the knowing destiny Marquis attacked. The fairy-slaying sword was already in front of the celestial devil lord's chest. With the fairy-slaying sword, the first demon emperor swung the death scythe in his hand and knocked the fairy-slaying sword away. His shocking reaction speed actually caught up with the phoenix's extreme speed. Before the fairy-slaying sword could strike, the fairy-slaying sword followed up and attacked the celestial devil lord again. The continuous attacks were faster than the previous. The death scythe in the first demon emperor's hand changed direction again and blocked the fairy-slaying sword with a boom. The two moves clashed. Before the fairy-slaying sword, the first demon emperor stepped forward and attacked with his black scythe. With the death scythe chasing, Ning Chen didn't retreat. The fairy-slaying sword went against the flow and attacked. A violent collision sounded. The starry sky was destroyed. The fairy-slaying sword blocked the death scythe, and the fairy-slaying sword attacked again. The first demon emperor snorted. Chaos surged around him and gathered on his fist. He punched out. His flesh and blood were unable to withstand the fairy-slaying sword. The fairy-slaying sword and the demon-slaying sword clashed. Endless chi waves spread out and quickly engulfed the starry sky around them. The destructive power was unstoppable. The two's battle intent was raised to the peak. Every move they made could destroy the heavens and earth. The strongest celestial devil lord and the strongest Xia Jiming Marquis. The two figures crossed each other rapidly. Demonic chi and sword chi surged as they clashed again and again. The rumbling continued. Demonic chi and fairy-slaying sword clashed in their hands. The airflow was chaotic and it was shocking. Boom, boom, boom. This battle concerned the fate of the two realms. They couldn't afford to lose. Outside the battle, the kings of the two realms had a heavy expression. They held their breaths and watched the battle nervously. Monsters. In front of the human army, Luo Xingchen couldn't help but say. These two were indescribably strong. They were like monsters. On the side, Mu Qianshang was shocked. Indeed, Jiming Marquis was no different from a monster now. Boom. In the center of the battle, Demon Emperor First Kun, who had the upper hand in cultivation, exploded with all his strength. The powerful impact sent Ning Chen's immortal slaughtering sword flying. The move was effective. Demon Emperor First Kuan moved forward. His death scythe swung across the sky and mercilessly took a life. In the moment of crisis, red light shone from the tribulation clouds in the sky. The immortal trapping sword fell and blocked the deadly black scythe. Ning Chen's left hand clenched and the immortal slaughtering sword returned. He took a step forward and slashed with both swords. Slaying immortal and slaughtering immortal. Demon Emperor First Kuan blocked with his scythe. The violent impact forced him to take half a step back. Since the start of the battle, the demon cultivator was the first to retreat. Outside the battle, the kings of the two realms were shocked. Swoosh! At this moment, red light filled the starry sky. Immortal trapping sword was activated again. Countless sword lights crisscrossed and slashed at the celestial devil lord. Demon Emperor First Kuan's eyes darkened. He grabbed a star and smashed it at the immortal sword in front of him. The red light slashed the star. Rocks flew everywhere. The sword momentum didn't stop and continued forward. Celestial Devil Blood Seal. As the sword lights approached, Demon Emperor First Kuan raised his hand. Bloody light filled the sky and formed a seal, blocking the thousands of sword lights. The immortal slaughtering sword and the celestial devil seal clashed. After a moment of stalemate, the two forces collapsed. In the violent aftershock, the white-haired figure flashed past quickly. Slaying immortal and slaughtering immortal came again. Pumph! Demon Emperor First Kuan snorted. He swung his death scythe. Chaotic demonic chi surrounded it and blocked the attack of the two swords. There were several rounds of extremely intense attacks and defenses. Danger surrounded every move. No one dared to be careless in the slightest. The four immortal swords appeared at the same time. With the support of the resentment of billions of creatures, knowing Destiny's combat power finally rose to the level of the celestial devil lord. It surpassed the imperial path and approached the ancient deity realm. After using so much power that doesn't belong to you, you can only barely fight me. However, how long can your physical body last in a battle of this level? Demon Emperor First Kuan said coldly in the battle. He used all his power. Every move pushed the limits of knowing Destiny's body. After dozens of moves, blood kept dripping from Ning Chen's hand, dyeing the two immortal swords red again and again. Knowing Destiny, who was bathed in blood, paved the future of the human race with blood. Even someone as strong as the celestial devil lord had the upper hand. Boom! The three immortal swords clashed again. Blood dripped from the corner of Demon Emperor First Kuan's mouth. After exchanging injuries, the celestial devil lord finally suffered internal injuries. Blood dripped from Ning Chen's hands. In order to kill the culprit, his injuries had multiplied. Back off! With his internal organs injured, Demon Emperor First Kuan let out a deep roar. Primal chaos demonic chi spread out, pushing back his opponent. 100 steps away, Ning Chen stopped. Silver light rose from his body. The life scroll of the open heavenly book appeared and quickly healed his injuries. In front of him, Demon Emperor First Kuan glanced at the last immortal sword floating in the sky. He was on guard. After fighting for so long, the 13th prince still hadn't used the celestial ending sword. It must be unusual. The celestial ending sword was unpredictable. It was the most mysterious of the four immortal swords. Few people had seen its true power, including him. If he guessed correctly, this sword was the 13th prince's true trump card. Chapter 13:18. Starry sky resentment covered the sky, and demonic chi spread for thousands of miles. The two forces clashed, and the sky changed color. Below the resentment clouds and demonic clouds, the two figures clashed again and again. Every time they clashed, it would bring about endless destruction. It was a battle that was beyond common knowledge. It was a battle of a higher level than Emperor Tao Supreme's. It was unfamiliar and shocking. The stars shifted, and the sun and moon sank. After exchanging almost 100 moves, the two experts were dyed red. True chi and demonic chi circled around them, quickly recovering from their injuries. Destruction and rebirth continued to cycle. After exchanging 100 moves, the two's combat power didn't decrease at all. Their powerful recovery ability allowed them to maintain their peak condition. Outside the battle, everyone's attention was attracted by this shocking battle. They held their breaths and were so nervous that they even forgot to breathe. Close combat was dangerous. The immortal slaying and immortal slaughtering swords were merciless. On the other hand, the celestial devil lord had the death god's scythe in his hand. Every attack of his was earth-shattering. The battle continued for a long time, and it was hard to tell who was better. They're even again. In the human army, the kings of the underworld looked serious. Although knowing Destiny's injuries were more serious, he wasn't at a disadvantage. The gap between the two had been narrowed to the maximum. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that knowing Destiny could do this. In the battle, the first demon emperor waved the death god scythe and blocked one attack after another. He glanced at the immortal ending sword floating in the resentment clouds and became more cautious. He knew that if he didn't force the 13th prince to use this sword, it meant that the 13th prince was still holding back. The real winner of this battle would be when the immortal ending sword fell. Celestial Devil 9 Transformations, Reincarnation. The battle reached its climax. The first demon emperor used the Celestial Devil 9 Transformations. His demonic palm held up the sky, and the clouds in the sky changed. It was a move that had never been seen before, and it shocked the ghosts and gods. Above the starry sky, a huge reincarnation phenomenon appeared. Thunder and lightning flashed, and the reincarnation kept surging. The strongest celestial devil art, Ultimate 9, moves the world. The first demon emperor held the reincarnation in one hand and the death god's scythe in the other. His demonic power shook the stars. With the appearance of the 9 transformations martial art, the demonic might spread rapidly. In the battle, Ning Chen's expression turned serious, and the 2 swords in his hands flew out. In the blink of an eye, the Yama King's divine zither appeared in front of Ning Chen. The white tiger deity's weapon of slaughter had reappeared in this world. The strings of the zither vibrated as the King Yenluo of Hell demanded his life. The King Yenluo of Hell resisted the cycle of reincarnation. Ding! With a profound sound, 3 swords circled in the air. Using the zither to control the swords, they slashed at the samsara phenomenon in front of them. Boom! With the support of Xianin, the immortal extermination, immortal slaughter, and immortal entrapment swords entered the great whirlpool of lightning, forcefully severing reincarnation. The cycle of reincarnation collapsed. At the same time, the death scythe came for his life. Ning Chen's right hand shook the Guqin. The Yama godly Guqin flipped over and stood up, blocking the deadly black scythe. 2 strings on the white tiger's zither of slaughter snapped, unable to withstand the sharpness of the death god's scythe. Ugh! The reincarnation and divine zither were destroyed. The corners of their mouths turned red, and they retreated several steps. One move for another. How many more moves can you block? 10 steps away, the first demon emperor raised his hand to wipe off the blood at the corner of his mouth. Chaotic demonic chi surged around him, quickly healing his injured body. 10 moves. Knowing Destiny can only block 10 moves. After 10 moves, I'll take your life. As soon as he finished speaking, black and red flames rose around Ning Chen's body. The immortal extermination and immortal entrapment swords flew back into his hands. 11th sword. The 2 swords turned, and the 11th sword appeared. Instantly, thousands of swords surged out between heaven and earth like a crazy waterfall, endless and shocking. The 11th sword appeared, a perfect move in the human world. Wherever the sword passed, the starry sky collapsed. Cracks appeared, spreading tens of thousands of miles away. Are you insulting your opponent with such a move? The first demon emperor snorted coldly. He waved the death god's scythe, and the powerful chaotic demonic chi surged, swallowing all the swords in the sky. The move that shook heaven and earth seemed so weak in front of the celestial devil emperor. 12th sword. The 11th sword appeared, followed by the 12th sword. In the void, the immortal entrapment swords flew over. The 3 swords combined, and a gorgeous sword light circled into the sky. The sword that surpassed the limits of the human world was dazzling. Under everyone's shocked gaze, the 12th sword slashed down, activating the demonic chi again. The sword light slashed down. In front, the first demon emperor's expression turned serious. This sword was more like it. The first demon emperor used his palm energy, and demonic chi surged. The first demon emperor used his palm energy, and demonic chi swept across the sky. The terrifying demonic chi blocked the peerless sword. The sword reached the pinnacle, and the peerless demonic chi collided with the two forces. Rumbling sounds were heard, and the violent aftershocks surged, instantly dividing the battle. Between the two, a huge spatial gully appeared. It was bottomless and insurmountable. In an instant, Su-yi moved in the starry sky. The phoenix's extreme speed surpassed the law of time, and directly passed through the spatial gully. One sword slashed the demon emperor. The sword was as fast as lightning, without any warning. This time, the spatial gully blocked the divine sense. Even the celestial devil emperor couldn't detect it. Boom! The sword entered the demonic barrier, and the chaotic demonic chi rapidly scattered. It couldn't stop the immortal execution's sharpness. The cold killing intent was maddening. The celestial devil emperor, who had experienced countless life and death battles, quickly reacted. He dodged to the side, sacrificing the rook to save the king. The ear-piercing sound of battle clothes being torn rang out. Blood splattered from the first demon emperor's left arm, dyeing his clothes red. The first demon emperor's face immediately turned angry. He used his full strength to counter with a powerful palm attack. Offense and defense switched positions. The immortal entrapment appeared in front of Ning Chen, blocking the demon emperor's palm. The violent impact shook. Ning Chen's figure moved, avoiding the aftershocks. 300 meters away, Ning Chen stopped. The two swords in his hands pierced through the air. In an instant, the remaining sword chi from the previous two moves quickly gathered. The 13th sword appeared. Fusing the aftershocks of the 11th and 12th swords appeared out of nowhere. They turned from illusory to real, and in an instant, 10,000 swords merged into one, forming an everlasting worldly saint sword. Sword. The 13th sword appeared. The worldly saint sword slashed down from the sky. It shone brightly, breaking through the chaotic demonic chi and killing the celestial devil emperor. The stunning sword was dazzling. The first demon emperor's eyes flashed. He took a step forward, and the 10,000-meter-tall demon avatar appeared. The celestial devil avatar was indomitable. It waved the death god's scythe in its hand. With a boom, it clashed with the worldly saint's sword. The aftershocks were vast and mighty, rapidly destroying the two's bodies. In the rumbling heaven and earth, the two's figures clashed several times. The sound of battle was deafening. It was an extremely exciting series of attacks and defenses. The attacker was unpredictable, while the defender was unchanging. His rich combat experience made people gasp in admiration. In front of the celestial devil army, the war god of the devil race, Azura, watched the battle quietly. The battle blood in his body kept surging, becoming harder and harder to suppress. The two's war souls were too dazzling. "You can't suppress it anymore?" Xianemo asked calmly. "Can you still hold it in?" Azura said in a deep voice. "Although you've been trying to suppress your nature, the fact that you're a demon will never change. Demons love to battle, and so do you." Xianemo was silent and didn't deny it. In the battle of life and death between human and demon had reached the most critical moment. The battle of 10 moves had reached half. The demon monarch's left arm was covered in red dots. Since the start of the battle, the knowing destiny state had the advantage of half a move. 5 moves. Demon Emperor Kun-yi flipped his palm to shake off the battle. His right hand brushed over his left arm to seal the wound. He looked at the 13th prince and said lightly, "This injury isn't enough to take my life." The celestial devil monarch, who had surpassed the emperor realm, had a shocking recovery ability. The injury wasn't fatal, and it couldn't shake the body of a demon. 5 moves left. "It's enough." Ningchen glanced at the celestial ending sword floating in the tribulation clouds and narrowed his eyes. It was almost time. In the next moment, an earth-shattering roar sounded in the battle. Ning Chen's body was sublimated to the extreme. Black and white currents rushed into the sky and pierced through the clouds. Boom! In the clouds of resentment, thunder roared, and the resentment of all living beings stirred rapidly. In the center of the huge whirlpool that spread for tens of thousands of miles, an ancient celestial sword fell from the sky. It merged with the origin of the immortal divine tree, and the celestial might shook the world. A complete celestial sword. Below, Demon Emperor Kun Yi was shocked when he saw the celestial ending sword in the center of the whirlpool. Wasn't the celestial ending sword already damaged? The ancient celestial sword was perfect and flawless. Ningchen raised his hand, and patterns spread out from the celestial ending sword's hilt and pierced into the knowing destiny state's right arm. The most mysterious celestial ending sword of the 4 celestial slaying swords appeared. Between heaven and earth, there was a faint sound of the sword, one after another, shocking everyone. Inside and outside the battle, everyone's expression changed when they felt the shocking sword pressure in front of them. Ning Chen's roar became more and more deafening. His sword intent kept rising. The strongest sword in the world had surpassed the limit and shocked the world. It was coming. In front, Demon Emperor Kun Yi's expression was unusually serious. He stared at the 13th prince in front of him, not daring to be distracted for a moment. Swoosh! Before anyone could react, the celestial ending sword arrived in front of Demon Emperor Kun Yi. The white-clothed figure was full of murderous intent. Getting ready, Demon Emperor Kun Yi instinctively placed the death scythe in front of him to block the first wave of attacks. As the weapons clashed, Demon Emperor Kun Yi's arm went numb. He couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. After blocking the killing move, he still couldn't see the former's body clearly. This meant that the top human in front of him had completely suppressed him in terms of speed. Since he was at a disadvantage in terms of speed, Demon Emperor Kun Yi made a prompt decision. Demonic chi surged around his body and protected his vital parts. 4 more moves. In the starry space, knowing destiny's figure disappeared. Only his illusory voice echoed. Powerful, so powerful that it was unbelievable. With the 4 celestial swords, the knowing destiny Marquis of the Great Xia finally started to turn the situation around. In the void, the first Kun Yi Demon Emperor spread out his consciousness and was fully focused. He was on guard against the incoming storm. Although he didn't want to believe it, he had to admit that this kid now had the power to be on the same level as him. In front of the human army, the kings of the immortal state realm, the underworld palace, and the number 1 pavilion all looked at the battle with serious expressions. Today, they might be witnessing a miracle with their own eyes. Chapter 1319. In the Battle of the Starry Skies, victory was decided in 10 moves. The celestial ending sword, tempered by billions of vengeful spirits, descended upon the world. The dawn of the Demon Slayer War finally appeared. The 4 fairy-slaying swords each had their own strengths. With the blessing of the celestial slashing sword, the knowing destiny state's strength, speed, and body were all enhanced. His combat strength was elevated to the peak of his life. The final 4 moves were about to determine the outcome of the battle. Ningchen unleashed all of his combat strength. His body was surrounded by a dazzling divine light and his fighting spirit was dazzling. In the blink of an eye, Ningchen's figure disappeared. His speed surpassed time and space, and it was difficult for the naked eye to catch sight of him. In the battle, first Demon Emperor Kun released his consciousness. Demonic chi flowed around the death god scythe, which was as black as ink. Since ancient times, the strongest crepe myrtle realm lord, and after ancient times, the strongest celestial devil lord, the 2 supreme masters of the human world were engaged in a life and death battle. Victory and defeat were only a matter of time. Clang! Zhu Xian and the Grim Reaper's scythe clashed. Raging waves swept out, destroying everything in their path. The 2 of them stared at each other, their killing intent astonishing. The instinctive reaction of a martial artist was beyond the limits of the divine sense and the naked eye. The first Kun Yi Demon Emperor once again blocked the attack of the knowing destiny state cultivator. His outstanding battle instincts were different from any of his previous opponents. Immortal execution. He clenched his left hand into a fist, and the immortal extermination sword slashed down from the sky. The sword had reached the extreme and returned to its original state. After thousands of battles, the knowing destiny sword had returned to its original state of swordsmanship, simple and sharp. It was a simple stroke, but it was as different as the clouds and mud. In the starry sky, a huge sword mark appeared. It was like a scar of the heavens that stretched for thousands of miles. As the second immortal sword approached, the first Kunyi demon monarch's expression darkened. He gathered his chaotic fiend essence and formed a protective barrier in front of him. Immortal and devil clashed. Two forces of completely opposite attributes collided. Chaotic devil chi rapidly dispersed, and layer after layer of protective barriers were broken. Immortal slaying advanced inch by inch, its sword might shocking the world, affecting the hearts of everyone present. Everyone in the human race was waiting for a miracle to occur. Would the undefeated legend of the ancient demon lord be broken today? The collision of the two forces only lasted for a moment, but it felt as long as 1,000 years. Under everyone's gaze, the fairy-slaying sword broke through the obstruction of the chaotic demonic chi and pierced into the chest of the demonic cultivator. Blood spurted out as the immortal slaying sword penetrated half an inch into his body, making it difficult for him to advance any further. The first Kunyi demon emperor roared in anger and struck out with his palm, forcefully counterattacking. With a rumbling sound, Ning Chen's body was sent flying like a shooting star, crashing into a huge meteor in the distance. 7 moves had already passed, but it was still difficult to determine who was the winner. Both of them had suffered heavy injuries, and even with their unparalleled recovery abilities, it was still difficult to quickly heal their injuries. Blood flowed and dyed their clothes red. Even though they were tens of thousands of feet apart, the two of them steadied themselves, and the fighting spirit in their eyes blazed even more fiercely. In the past 130,000 years, you are the first person to be able to injure me to this extent. The first Kunyi demon emperor looked at the guardian of the human race in front of him with respect. In just 100 years, he already had such amazing martial arts attainments. Perhaps there would not be a second opponent like him. In front of him, Ning Chen raised his hand to wipe off the blood at the corner of his mouth. He held the celestial ending sword tightly in his right hand, and 3 celestial swords fell around him. The tips of the swords hung upside down, and their baleful aura was oppressive. 3 moves left. Ning Chen's tired and cold voice was like a declaration of death. His body moved, and thunder roared through the air. He was so fast that no one could see him clearly. The first Kunyi demon emperor stared at the afterimage that flashed in front of him, and the death god's scythe in his hand directly struck out. With a loud bang, the divine weapons clashed once again. The remaining energy was frantic and spread out in all directions. "You've slowed down," the first Kunyi demon emperor said coldly. Before this, when this person attacked, it was difficult to even catch a trace, let alone afterimages. Now that he could see afterimages, it meant that this person's body had reached its limit. "I have indeed slowed down," Ning Chen said lightly, and the flame mark between his eyebrows had already disappeared. Seeing this, the first Kunyi demon emperor's pupils constricted. Before he could finish his thoughts, he heard the cry of a phoenix. Behind the celestial demon emperor, black and red flames gathered, and the body of a phoenix appeared out of thin air. It transcended time and space, slaying immortals and demons. The power of slaying immortals was invincible. At the moment of crisis, the first Kunyi demon emperor quickly dodged to the side, avoiding his vital parts. Ugh! The immortal sword pierced through the first Kunyi demon emperor's body, and blood splattered everywhere. The immortal sword pierced through the first Kunyi demon emperor's left shoulder, and he was severely injured. Ha! The first Kunyi demon emperor's eyes turned blood red, and chaotic demonic chi surged around him, pushing him back. 100 feet away, he stopped, and the 4 swords of slaying immortals appeared in his hand. After 8 moves, the demonic lord was severely injured. Determination flashed across his eyes, and the 4 swords turned, guiding the evil chi into his body. Boom! Evil clouds stirred in the sky, and the resentment of billions of beings fell from the sky, entering the bodies of the knowing destiny duo. As the resentment entered his body, Ning Chen's body gradually reached its limit, and it started to collapse, devouring his body. At this moment, the blazing war soul shone brightly, illuminating the dark human world. In front of the human army, the lords of the netherworld were shocked when they saw this scene. Oh no, the knowing destiny aura has increased again. Even the knowing destiny Marquis, who had the best foundation in the world, couldn't be safe after bearing so much power that didn't belong to him. In front of the lords, Qin Ning clenched her fists, and sadness flashed across her eyes. He was always like this, choosing to sacrifice himself again and again, never thinking about himself. Beside her, a man felt her heartbeat and said softly, "I'll wait for the peace you promised." On the battlefield, Ning Chen's body absorbed the resentment of billions of beings. His body kept collapsing, and it was irreversible. Between the two bodies, the first Kunyi demon emperor suppressed the injuries in his body. He looked at the army of millions of demons in the distance, and the determination in his eyes never wavered. Demons should fight on the battlefield. Chaotic times were the time to create heroes. Come, let me see your last power. The first Kunyi demon emperor glanced at the knowing destiny duo and said, "6 paths fall together. Thousands of demonic tribulations. Taishang forbidden sword." In the starry sky, the knowing destiny duo spoke at the same time. Instantly, boundless sword intent spread out, merging with the resentment of billions of beings. The forbidden sword appeared. It was a shocking scene. In the starry sky, 2 sword storms shot up into the sky. The knowing destiny duo flew up in the storm, and their war souls were dazzling, guarding the world. The 2 bodies attacked at the same time, and the 4 deity swords merged into the forbidden sword. The 2 sword storms quickly spread and merged into one, swallowing the celestial demon emperor in the middle. In the sword storm, the knowing destiny duo flew up, and the light around them became more and more dazzling, like the sun. The 2 attacks combined, and a black and white divine sword appeared between the 2 bodies. The sword was 10,000 feet long, and its power was shocking. The final attack, the final sword, the only one in the world, witnessed by heaven and earth. Ha! The knowing destiny duo shouted and controlled the divine sword to slash down. Below, the first Kunyi demon emperor's eyes darkened, and his body quickly enlarged. His 10,000 feet long demonic body rose into the sky. The death scythe waved and met the black and white divine sword. With a boom, the divine sword and demon clashed, and the 2 divine weapons collapsed. Inside the collapsed black and white divine sword, the 4 deity swords broke through the sky. The 4 immortal swords, slaying demons and protecting humanity. Swoosh! The sword light slashed, and the celestial demon's head flew up into the sky. Blood spurted out, dyeing the starry sky red. The demon emperor's head was cut off, and chaotic demonic chi on his body rushed to the demon head in the sky to reattach it. Swoosh! At this moment, the second deity sword light slashed again, and the demonic body was cut in half. Blood spurted out like a waterfall, and it was extremely dazzling. Swoosh! Swoosh! Then, the third and fourth deity sword light slashed down in the starry sky. The celestial demon emperor's body was cut into 5 and scattered in all directions. Chapter 1320. In the battle in space, the immortal slaying 4 swords killed the demon king. Blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the battlefield red. Head, torso, arms, and lower limbs. The celestial devil lord's body was split into 5 parts. The power of the immortal slaying 4 swords was shocking. However, chaotic demonic chi surged from every part of the demon king Kuan's body, protecting each other and trying to merge back together. It was a shocking scene. Outside the battle, the kings could not hide their shock. Could the celestial devil lord be immortal? In front, Ning Chen's expression darkened. Thoughts flashed through his eyes. Not far away, the phoenix body descended from the sky. It looked at the unbelievable scene in front of it, and its expression was also very serious. Undying body, the phoenix body said in a serious voice. There can't be a true immortal in this world. Otherwise, Kuan wouldn't have sealed himself for hundreds of thousands of years with his demonic origin. Ningchen said calmly, since we can't kill him now, let's seal him first. That works too. The phoenix body nodded. Black-red phoenix flames rose around it and swallowed the Demon King's arms. At the same time, Ningchen's main body also attacked. Ice and snow swept across the sky, covering the celestial devil lord's head, torso, and lower limbs. The two bodies worked together and opened the yellow spring. They controlled the divine restriction of heaven and earth and sealed the 5 bodies in different small worlds. At the critical moment, demonic chi surged in the void. A figure in crimson armor walked out. He grabbed the Demon King's head in a small world and quickly left. Xian Luo. Seeing this, Ning Chen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He waved the celestial slashing sword, and a sword light broke through space and time, slashing at the escaping Xian Luo. When the sword light got close, Xian Luo turned his palm and absorbed the attack. With a boom, there was a shocking explosion. Xian Luo's body was covered in blood. Just one sword strike had almost killed him. Jiming Marquis, you owe me half of your body. Today, I'll use the celestial devil lord's head to pay for it. Xian Luo did not dare to face the opponent who was not the same as before. He suppressed his injuries and quickly left. In the small worlds, chaotic demonic chi surged and kept attacking the seal. Ning Chen's expression darkened. He formed a seal with his hands and strengthened the divine restriction. After a moment of delay, Xian Luo's figure in the distance. This change happened in the blink of an eye. Before the kings in front of the armies of the 2 realms could even react, the dust had already settled. The celestial devil monarch was defeated. His head was taken away, and his other body parts were sealed by the knowing destiny state. The demonic realm had lost their leader, and their morale was in chaos. In the starry sky, the other 3 battles were still going on. The Scaled Emperor, the master of the Holy Capital, and the Western sacred leader were blocked by the human cultivators and were unable to break free. After sealing the celestial devil sovereign between the 2 armies, Ningchen looked at the 3 battlefields in the distance. He took a step forward, merged with his body, and instantly disappeared. The Scaled Emperor, who was closest to the battlefield, felt a chill run down his spine. He did not dare to hesitate and immediately retreated. However, it was already too late. In an instant, Ning Chen's figure flashed over. A dazzling flame mark appeared between his eyebrows. The Scaled Emperor attacked, but his arm was grabbed. In the next moment, Juexian slashed down, shocking the world. The sword that shook the heavens caused the world to lose its color. The Scaled Emperor's left arm fell off, and blood spurted everywhere. It was a shocking scene, and all the kings were shocked once again. The Scaled tribe's absolute defense was like paper in front of absolute strength. It could not withstand a single blow. Peace is not easy, but you don't cherish it. The human world is not a battlefield for you to fulfill your ambitions. The human race is not someone you can bully as you wish. Ningchen said coldly. He swung the sword in his hand again and slashed at the Scaled Emperor in front of him. The Scaled Emperor was shocked. He immediately retreated, not daring to continue fighting. You can't escape. Ningchen snorted. His figure flashed, and with a speed that surpassed the limits of the world, he charged forward again. Ningchen's speed was suppressed, his strength was suppressed, and with the support of billions of resentful spirits, his physical body kept collapsing. However, his combat power was so terrifying that it made people despair. The Juexian slashed, and the starry sky within 10,000 miles was destroyed. The Scaled Emperor could not dodge in time, and a terrifying sword wound appeared on his chest. His scales could not block it, and the wound was so deep that his bones could be seen. Scales flew all over the sky, and they were stained with blood. The strength of the knowing destiny state was unparalleled. Damn it! With his life in danger, the Scaled Emperor's face turned ferocious. The demonic vitality in his body surged, and he charged forward, wanting to perish together with his opponent. Without this tortoise shell, what do you have left? Ningchen raised his hand and clasped the scaled emperor's face. The divine flames of the phoenix spread and burned the demonic cultivator's body. Ugh! The scaled emperor groaned in pain. His body was engulfed by the divine flames of the phoenix and burned violently. The scaled emperor's demonic vitality surged to resist the power of the divine flames. Ningchen clasped the scaled emperor's face with one hand, and his sword hand clenched into a fist. He punched the scaled emperor's dantian sea of qi. Bam! The force of the punch penetrated the scaled emperor's body, and his dantian collapsed. The demonic vitality surged and scattered wildly. With his 1,000 years of cultivation destroyed, the scaled emperor's eyes were filled with despair. His body was quickly engulfed by the red phoenix flames. Ningchen waved his hand and threw the scaled emperor aside. He looked at the two battles in the distance and walked forward step by step. In the starry sky, the white-haired knowing destiny state was walking at a steady pace. At this moment, he was like a demon, and every soldier in the demonic territory was terrified. Around Ningchen, every deity sword was dripping with blood. The battle of killing demons was coming to an end. The knowing destiny state body was also about to be destroyed due to the backlash of the resentment of billions of creatures. However, his absolute power was not reduced at all. Fear, despair, and regret rose in the hearts of all the soldiers in the demonic territory. Chaos began to appear within the army, and it became more and more intense. In the distant battle, the Lord of the Divine Capital and the Western Saint Lord shocked their opponents with their moves. They looked at the 13 sons of the heavenly demon tribe in the distance with serious expressions. The current 13 sons of the heavenly demon tribe were too terrifying. They were almost invincible. Just as the knowing destiny state and the demonic territory emperors were about to fight, a majestic demonic might appeared in the starry sky. It was powerful and blazing. It was not inferior to the first lord of the heavenly demon tribe who had just been defeated. Stop! Xianjuyo walked out from the turbulent demonic qi. He looked at the disciple in front of him and said, Ningchen saw the person in front of him and stopped. Take it as doing master a favor, Xianjuyo said softly. Ningchen was silent. After a while he said, the human race needs peace, and the demonic territory is the source of chaos. Master, you should know better than me the principle of eliminating the source of trouble. I can't agree to your request. With that, deity sword light shone around Ningchen again. For the human race and the people around him who he cherished more, knowing destiny state made up his mind to go against his master. In front of him, Xianjuyo sighed. He was the emperor of the demonic territory after all. He couldn't just watch the soldiers of the 100 races get killed. If you win in one move, I won't interfere in the affairs of the two territories. Come, let me see your growth. Then, 9 beams of black light flew out from the turbulent demonic qi around Xianjuyo. The Xianjia 9 changes appeared in the human world again. Please. Ningchen didn't dare to be careless in front of his master. He knew that his master's strength was definitely not below any Emperor Dao sovereign, including Demon Emperor Kuan. The Xianjia appeared and the 9 changes merged into one, turning into a black spear. Xianjuyo raised his hand and held the spear. His battle-intent sword. Ha! In the final battle, Ningchen roared. He gathered the last of his strength and used the move he had comprehended in the past. Nirvana. Nirvana of the Phoenix, rebirth from the fire. Nirvana of the way of the sword, returning to the origin. This was the final move. Ningchen's figure rose slowly. He used the celestial end shift and his sword light soared into the 9 heavens. In front of the sky demon army, Xianjuyo looked at the dazzling sword light in the sky. Gratification flashed through his eyes. He had indeed grown. Jiuyo battle technique, flying swan celestial slaying art. With the ultimate move in front of him, Xianjuyo also gathered all of his demonic qi. The black spear condensed demonic might and shot out. The battle between master and disciple concerned the fate of the two territories. The moment the move was made, no one held back. Endless destructive power spread out. Wherever it passed, the starry sky quickly collapsed. An instant later, the sword light and spear light collided in the starry sky. A terrifying tremor sounded. The aftershock was vast and mighty, turning the world into chaos. In the battle, Xianjuo stepped back slightly and steadied himself. In the void, the demonic might devoured his body. Ningchen took all of the remaining force, but he suppressed his injuries and refused to take half a step back. Xianjuo took a deep look at his disciple in the void and said, "I've lost. Master, thank you for letting me win." Ningchen descended from the sky and said calmly. Xianjuo turned around and looked at the two demonic realm rulers behind him. He said indifferently, "If we retreat now, we can still save the lives of most of the soldiers in the demonic realm. That's all I have to say. See you again." As soon as he said that, the demonic qi in the world disappeared. Xianjuo's figure disappeared and left the battlefield. Retreat. In front of the Sky Demon army, the two demonic realm rulers looked at each other. They did not dare to hesitate and ordered. With that order, the million-strong Sky Demon army immediately retreated toward the Red Phoenix Star Zone. In the void, Ningchen looked at the retreating Sky Demon army and said, "Kill! Kill!" With the Emperor's order, the human army's murderous cries shook the sky. The anger that had been suppressed for decades erupted today. The army set out and passed by Jiming continuously, chasing after the Sky Demon army. The responsibility had been fulfilled. Around Ningchen, the resentment of billions of living beings surged out. In the sky, the remnant souls of all living beings appeared. They bowed in unison and paid their respects to the plain-clothed young man below. "Thank you for accompanying me on the path to slaying demons. If fate wills it, we'll meet again in the future." Ningchen bowed and said softly, "See you in the future." The remnant souls bowed again, and then their figures dissipated one after another, returning to the world. The resentment of all living beings left his body, and more than half of Ningchen's foundation dissipated. He had no regrets in slaying the demons. "It's all over." At the side, Qing Ning walked forward and said, "I promise to return her a world of peace. Although I'm late for decades, I've finally done it." Ningchen looked at a man who was not far away and said softly, "You've done well enough. Now that everything is over, we should go back." Qing Ning looked back at the world in the distance and said, Ningchen nodded and left with the woman beside him. On the battlefield, the flames of war spread for millions of miles, but Ji Ming was missing. The moment everything ended, Ji Ming left and returned to the place where he belonged. Chapter 1321. The flames of war were everywhere in the Red Phoenix Star Zone. The human army invaded the primordial demon realm's base in Sky Beyond Heaven, and the war lasted for several months. The celestial demon lord and the scale emperor were defeated. The demon realm's defeat was an irreversible fact. The 100 Races army started to retreat to the demon realm, not daring to continue fighting. The million-strong demon army retreated. The scene was shocking. The kings of the 100 Races felt an indescribable bitterness in their hearts when they returned dejectedly after coming here full of ambition. They had once said that they would contribute to the demon realm and expand their territory. But in just a few decades, everything had turned into a dream. They were unwilling and unwilling. But the Marquis Jiming of the human race was too strong, so strong that it made them despair. The demon lord died in battle, the scale emperor was completely wiped out, and even the demonic emperor of the 9 underworlds lost. The celestial demon 13 scions were no longer the same. Just one of them was enough to intimidate the entire primordial demon realm. 10 months later, the 100 Races army retreated from the Red Phoenix Star Zone. The once ancient Star Zone was almost destroyed in the war. There were many things waiting to be done. The Ziwei Divine Realm, the Underworld, and the number 1 pavilion of the human race left dozens of kings to help rebuild the Red Phoenix Star Zone. "King, we made the right choice." The Grand Elder of the Ghost race looked at the Star Zone that was waiting to be rebuilt and couldn't hide his excitement. After the human race defeated the demon realm, the ghosts naturally became the subjects of the Emperor. The Red Phoenix Star Zone was the best thing the ghosts could rely on to return to their peak. The great Xia Jiming Marquis. On the white bone throne, the Ghost King murmured softly. His eyes flashed with emotion. He was forced to make a choice back then. He didn't expect it to be the opportunity for the ghost to soar. The great Xia Jiming Marquis was indeed extraordinary. Inji, thank you, the Ghost King said softly. Inji had contributed greatly to the ghosts becoming the subjects of the great Xia Jiming Marquis. She could be said to be the greatest subject of the ghosts. Inji only did what I should do, Inji said respectfully. Even she didn't expect the 13th prince of the celestial demon realm to reach such heights one day, so high that everyone had to look up to him. Just as the war between the human realm and the devil realm ended and the major star regions began to rebuild, in the divine prefecture of the eastern domain in the inner realm, knowing destiny returned in a low-key manner. Under the rule of the current Emperor Xia, the great Xia dynasty gradually regained its former glory. It quelled internal rebellions and resisted external enemies. The name of the virtuous emperor was known throughout the world. In front of the royal city of Grand Xia, a white-haired figure in plain robes walked over. His entire body was covered with the scars of time. Beside him, the green-clothed woman followed. She was beautiful, and just like in the past, she quietly accompanied him. When the two of them entered the city, the general guarding the city was stunned when he saw them. This white-haired young man was very similar to the statue in the palace. I want to go back and take a look. On the street, Ningchen looked at the woman beside him and said softly, "Yes." Qing Ning nodded and walked towards the manor of Marquis Jiming together. West of the imperial city, Jiming Ho Manor. The Wu Ho Manor had been empty for 100 years. Other than the current Emperor Xia, who occasionally came, no one dared to take half a step into it. After 100 years, the words Jiming Marquis had pretty much become a legend and had become the faith of the great Xia people. In front of the manor, Ning Chen and Qing Ning walked over. The familiar scene in front of them was no different from 100 years ago. Qi is considerate. Ning Chen opened his mouth and said softly, "In his heart, the person he respects the most is you, his master. Naturally, he would not allow anyone to touch your manor." Qing Ning replied. Ning Chen smiled lightly and walked forward, pushing open the door of the manor. There were no guards around the manor. However, when the two of them arrived, the experts hidden around the manor had already sensed them and were about to attack. "No need to be nervous. I'm just going back to take a look." Ning Chen's aura flowed around him, suppressing the experts as he smiled. All the experts around the manor immediately froze, their faces filled with shock. Who was this person? Was he the legendary 4th-level expert? I haven't been back for 100 years. Everyone's faces have changed. Qing Ning's gaze swept across the many experts of the royal family hidden in the dark and said softly, "The appearance of a young expert means that the great Xia has truly entered the golden age of martial arts. Those old fellows should also rest." Ningchen smiled. As the two of them talked, they walked into the manor together. Everything was the same as before, so familiar. "Back then, you were the one who planned strategies and calmed all the wars here. Are you proud?" Qing Ning smiled. "I'm just repaying a debt of gratitude. Back then, if it weren't for Her Majesty's protection, I wouldn't even have the chance to enter this manor," Ningchen said softly. He had no way to repay her kindness. He could only use all he had learned in his life to calm the world. At this moment, outside the manor, a sword light flew over. In the sword light, a white-robed figure appeared. His cultivation was infinitely close to the 4th level, and he dispersed the restraints on the experts. "Greetings, Marquis Bai Yi." Around the manor, the experts of the royal family appeared and bowed respectfully. In the manor, Ningchen felt the commotion outside. He turned around and looked at the person who came, a strange look flashing in his eyes. "You've become a marquis?" Ningchen asked with a smile. Looking at the familiar figure in the manor, Bai Ye's body trembled, his face filled with disbelief. "Master!" After a moment, Bai Yi came back to his senses and immediately bowed. "Master?" A strange look flashed across Qing Ning's face. "This is the descendant of the millions of innocent people in the War of the Gods. Back then, when he came to take revenge, I taught him sword techniques," Ningchen explained. When Qing Ning heard this, the doubts in her heart disappeared. So that's how it was. Back then, I was young and inexperienced and offended master. Please punish me, Bai Yi said respectfully. You're not wrong, Ningchen said softly. Back then, I sacrificed millions of innocent people and indeed committed an unforgivable sin. It's only right for you to take revenge. Master's responsibility, Bai Yi can't compare. Bai Yi sighed. Ningchen smiled and didn't continue on this topic. He sized up the young man in front of him and continued, now that you're a Marquis of the Great Xia, don't disgrace this name. I see that you've already touched the 4th level, so I'll give you a small gift. As he finished speaking, Ningchen raised his hand. Between heaven and earth, sword light gathered and turned into a small silver sword that entered between the eyebrows. Here, there's some of my understanding of the way of the sword. I hope it'll be of use to you. After that, Ningchen retracted his hand, and the sword qi that filled the air dissipated. Thank you, master. Bai Yi felt the shocking sword will of the small silver sword between his eyebrows and couldn't hide the shock in his heart. He bowed again. All right, you can leave first. With your current status, it's not suitable for you to appear here. It'll easily cause unnecessary chaos. Ningchen reminded him with a smile. Bai Yi was silent. He immediately looked back at the imperial family worshippers behind him and said, all of you can leave as well. The worshippers suppressed the shock in their hearts and disappeared again. After sending the worshippers away, Bai Yi didn't stay any longer. He turned into sword light and left through the air. Not bad. Qing Ning smiled and said, to be able to let go of hatred is not something that ordinary people can do. With them in the Great Xia, we can leave with peace of mind. This era will eventually be handed over to them. Ningchen smiled. In the Marquis manor, the two didn't stay for long. They immediately left the manor and walked towards the palace. In the heavenly mandate hall of the Great Xia Palace, the current emperor of the Great Xia, Xia Qi, sat high on the dragon throne. His handsome and majestic face had the aura of an emperor. At this moment in the main hall, an illusory figure walked out and said respectfully, Your Majesty, someone has broken into the manor of the Marquis. What did you say? On the dragon throne, Xia Qi's eyes were filled with anger when he heard this. He slammed the table and stood up. Almost at the same time, the news of someone breaking into the manor of the Marquis spread rapidly among the various forces in the imperial city. Not long after, the various forces sent people to investigate. The manor of the Marquis was the emperor's reverse scale. Today, someone actually dared to break in. Was he tired of living? In the imperial city, the two Marquis guarding the manor were about to move out when they were immediately stopped by Bai Yi. It's master, Bai Yi said. Marquis? Kong Yu heard this and was shocked. The Marquis was back? On the side, a young man who had just become a Marquis revealed a fanatical look. Bai Ye's master was the legendary guardian of the Great Xia, the Marquis. Don't make a fuss. Master doesn't want to alarm the people in the city. Bai Yi reminded. Kong Yu looked towards the palace. His Majesty should have received the news by now. Maybe the Marquis is back. In the Heavenly Mandate Palace, the Dark Dragon Guard said respectfully. On the dragon throne, the furious Xia Qi trembled slightly. Master? After a moment of absent-mindedness, Xia Qi quickly recovered and said, Go and investigate immediately. In the main hall, the Dark Dragon Guard accepted the order and disappeared. In front of the palace, Ningchen came with Qing Ning. He had not returned for nearly 100 years. Almost all the faces had become unfamiliar. Things are the same, but people are different. Qing Ning sighed softly. Ningchen smiled softly and said, Sister Qing Ning, why have you become so sentimental? I haven't been back for too long. I miss home. Qing Ning gathered her thoughts and replied softly. Let's go into the palace and have a look. Ningchen replied as he walked towards the palace. In front of the palace, the soldiers guarding the palace saw them and wanted to stop them, but their bodies did not listen to them. It was a shocking scene. The two walked all the way into the palace. Along the way, everyone stopped and could not stop them. In the world, the only person who had mastered the laws of time and space was not someone who could be stopped by the warriors of the mortal world. In front of the Heavenly Mandate Palace, The two walked side by side. In the imperial hall, Xia Qi felt it and immediately stood up. What was this aura? The fate of the emperor was invulnerable. Under the great pressure, the fate of the great Xia dynasty filled Xia Qi's body. Purple Qi was vast and mighty, automatically protecting its master. In front of the main hall, under the 1,000 steps of stone steps, a figure in plain clothes walked up. His white hair danced in the wind. Nearly 200 years had passed. Although knowing Destiny's appearance had not changed, he had really aged. His long white hair danced in the wind, showing the ruthlessness of time. Under the 1,000 steps of stone steps, Ning Chen walked up step by step, neither hurried nor slow. After fighting for half his life and quelling all the wars, knowing Destiny returned to the beginning of the story. Chapter 1322. In front of the Great Xia Imperial Palace, in front of the Heavenly Mandate Hall, there were thousands of steps leading to Tianting. At the bottom of the 1,000 steps, the silhouette in plain clothes walked up step by step, towards the end of the stone steps. Not long after, Jiming appeared in front of the Heavenly Mandate Hall. His white hair danced in the wind. In the Heavenly Mandate Hall, when Xia Qi saw him, his body shook. He could no longer keep calm. Master! After such a long time, Xia Qi's eyes were filled with tears. At this moment, the majesty of the emperor no longer existed. When he was young, his deepest memory was the thin but tall figure of his master, who held up the sky of the great Xia. Did you only see your master? Outside the hall, Qing Ning walked in and smiled. Aunt Qing. Xia Qi's smile became brighter and brighter. Looking at Xia Qi, who was now in charge, Qing Ning's face flashed with emotion. Time had passed too quickly. Little Xia Qi, who was chased all over the yard, had now become the emperor of the great Xia. It's Jiming Marquis. The news of Jiming Marquis' return spread like wildfire throughout the great Xia imperial city. Apart from the commoners, almost all the top forces knew about this news. Shocked, all the forces were silent. Jiming Marquis of the great Xia, this name gave people too much pressure, even more than the emperor of the great Xia. This was a true living legend. Back then, he single-handedly saved Grand Xia from calamity, leaving his name in the annals of history for eternity. Since the news has spread, we can't pretend that we don't know. Let's go into the palace. A serious voice sounded from one of the forces. The return of Jiming Marquis might be a chance for them to rise. In the Heavenly Mandate Hall of the Great Xia, the emperor and his teacher were catching up. Outside the hall, under the thousands of steps, the officials of the Great Xia arrived and knelt in front of the hall, waiting for the emperor and his teacher to summon them. Master, do you want to meet them? In front of the hall, one report after another sounded. Xia Qi looked at the man in front of him and asked, "Since they are all here, let's meet them." Ning Chen smiled. No one was an exception. Even the saints were not exempt. These officials were the pillars of the great Xia, so there was no harm in meeting them. Xia Qi nodded. He looked at the palace attendant not far away and said, "Summon the officials into the palace." The emperor gave the order. Not long after, outside the Heavenly Mandate Hall, the sharp voice of the palace attendant rang out and spread to the ears of every courtier. The ministers thanked him and stood up. They walked up to the Heavenly Mandate Palace in an orderly manner. Inside the Heavenly Mandate Palace, the officials lined up neatly in 2 rows and walked in one after another. After taking their positions, they knelt down and saluted respectfully. Hundreds of officials came for an audience, and the noblest nobles in the Great Xia dynasty all came to witness the glory of the Great Xia Jiming Marquis. "Rise," Xia Qi said calmly before the dragon throne. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The officials kowtowed in thanks and stood up one after another. 2 figures stood quietly in the center of the hall. The man on the left was dressed in plain clothes and had white hair. Bai Chen glanced at the white-haired young man in the hall from the corner of his eyes, and his heart trembled. It was indeed the Marquis of Jiming. He looked almost the same as the statue in the palace. The martial Marquis whose name shook the world had finally returned. Take a look if you want to. There's no need to sneak around. Ningchen felt the curious and cautious gazes of the officials and smiled. In front of the dragon throne, Xiaqi also said, "This is my teacher, the Marquis of Jiming, whom you have always wanted to see. Today, you don't have to be so formal. If you have anything to say or ask, feel free to say it." After Emperor Xia spoke, the officials below relaxed a little. They looked up at the Marquis of Jiming in the hall, and the curiosity in their eyes could not be concealed. "I heard that the Marquis was already the top fighter in the Divine Prefecture 100 years ago. I wonder what level the Marquis is at now?" A newly appointed Marshal Marquis asked respectfully. "The 4th level, the peak of the King Realm," Ningchen said with a smile. Hearing this, the officials were in an uproar. It was said that the strongest fighters in the Divine Prefecture and even the 5 regions had just broken through to the King Realm not long ago. The Marquis of Jiming had already reached the peak of the King Realm. Beside Ningchen, Qin Ning chuckled. The martial arts of the Inner Realm started too late, and most of the fighters in the Battle of the Gods had left with them. This guy's cultivation could only scare people in the Divine Prefecture. Fortunately, the war between the 2 levels did not affect the Inner Realm. Otherwise, with the martial arts of the Inner Realm, the entire 5 regions would be destroyed. "Marquis, how can I enter the 4th level?" the Marshal Marquis asked again. "Master a law of heaven and earth," Ningchen said patiently. "This law will be the foundation of your martial arts. If you can't truly master it, I suggest that you don't enter the 4th level in a hurry. Otherwise, your foundation will not be stable, and it will be difficult for you to move forward in the future." In the hall, the generals of the Xia dynasty all quieted down when they heard this, especially the 3 Marshal Marquis. They looked at each other and each had their own thoughts. They had been stuck at the peak of the 3rd level for too long, but they still could not find a way to break through to the 4th level. They did not expect this to be the reason. "Bai Yi, you cultivate the way of the sword. Just focus on the sword. There is no need to be distracted by comprehending the other laws of heaven and earth. When you succeed in the way of the sword, you will naturally enter the 4th level," Ningchen reminded. "I will remember Master's teachings," Bai Yi replied respectfully between the 2 Marshal Marquis. "Kongyu, you were the first to follow me. Because of the war of the Xia dynasty, your martial arts foundation was not well established. Now that your cultivation has been surpassed by these juniors, have you ever regretted it?" Ningchen looked at the man in front of Bai Yi and asked seriously. Kongyu was silent. After a moment, he said, "Although I am unwilling, I have never regretted it." Ningchen nodded and said, "Today, I will repay you for the time I owe you." As soon as he finished speaking, silver light rose around Ningchen. The open heavenly book opened, and the wind and snow quickly spread out in all directions with the heavenly mandate palace as the center. The power of the emperor shocked the 9 states. In the imperial city of the Xia dynasty, thousands of people looked at the falling snow with strange expressions. It was sunny just now. Why did it suddenly snow? In the heavenly mandate palace, under the shocked gazes of the officials, Ningchen made his move. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered wildly and flowed endlessly into Kongyu's body. The heavenly book tempered his body, and the intense pain caused Kongyu to groan. His skin cracked and blood flowed out. "Guard your mind," Ningchen said calmly. Ningchen said calmly as he increased his strength by another 30% to help Kongyu refine his foundation. 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Time passed slowly. The wind and snow around the heavenly mandate palace gradually stopped and calmed down. In the heavenly mandate palace, Ningchen stopped. A look of fatigue flashed across his face. He said, "It's done." Kongyu opened his eyes and felt the abundant power in his body. He could not hide the excitement in his eyes. He immediately knelt down and said, "I will never forget Marquis' kindness." Ningchen waved his hand to stop the former from kneeling. He said softly, "I told you that you are now a Marquis. You can't kneel to others so easily." Kongyu heard this and his body shook. After a moment, he straightened up and bowed. He said, "Kongyu will remember Marquis' teachings." In the main hall, the officials looked at this scene with complicated expressions. The Marquis of the Xia dynasty was now too high in status. The reason was because of the Marquis Jiming. It could be said that the appearance of the Marquis Jiming had raised the Marquis of the Xia dynasty to another level. What are you all worried about? Ningchen looked over at the officials and said calmly, worried that their power is too high and they will become officials who use it for their own ends? When the officials heard these words, they were all shocked. They immediately lowered their heads and did not dare to look at the Marquis. How would the Marquis know what they were thinking? In front of the dragon throne, Xia Qi sighed. In front of his master, the schemes of these officials were not enough. Yes. Amongst the officials, an old official with white hair and beard gritted his teeth and walked out. He said solemnly, Marquis, the Marquis of the Xia dynasty has too much power. If he rebels, the country will not be a country. Is that what you all think? Ningchen looked at the officials behind the old official and said. The officials kept silent and did not dare to reply. Will you rebel? Ningchen's gaze shifted, looking at the three martial marquis guarding the imperial court, and said calmly. We do not dare. Kong Yu and Bai Ye's expressions changed as they replied. 200 years ago, a rebellious marquis appeared in the Great Xia. 100 years ago, another rebellious marquis appeared in the Great Xia. Ningchen said expressionlessly, Do you all understand what I mean? The three of them looked at each other and bowed. We are willing to give up our power. Ningchen nodded and said calmly, Power corrupts people's hearts. The glory of the Marquis of Great Xia is obtained through blood and battle merits. It is not obtained through power. Do you understand? We will follow your teachings. The three of them replied respectfully. The Marquis's power was taken away. When the officials of Great Xia saw this, their eyes were filled with shock. As a Marquis, he actually took away the power of the Marquis. It was unbelievable. Ji Rong, thank you, Marquis, for your righteousness. In front of all the ministers, the old minister with white hair and white beard bowed shakily and said excitedly, Surname Ji, are you a descendant of the teacher? Ningchen's eyes flashed with a weird light as he asked. The white-haired old official said respectfully. Ningchen went up and helped the old man up. I am indebted to the teacher. Seeing his descendant here today, I am relieved. After this short interlude, the officials gradually calmed down. From time to time, officials walked out to ask for advice. Ningchen was not in a hurry. He patiently answered the questions of the officials one by one. Outside the palace, the sun was setting. A day had passed. Inside the palace, the officials left reluctantly. After being an official for so many years, this was the first time they felt that the heavenly mandate palace with its constant infighting was so nostalgic. These officials have not been so magnanimous for many years. After the officials left, Xia Qi walked down from the dragon throne and said, Because I have no conflict of interest with them now, they dare to ask for advice. Ningchen smiled. Master still sees through people's hearts so clearly. Xia Qi smiled. All right, no need to flatter me. Let me ask you something. Is the Emperor of Northern Meng still Mingyu? Ningchen asked. No. Xia Qi shook his head. As early as 20 years ago, Mingyu had already given up the throne of Northern Meng. After that, he disappeared. Chapter 1323. Ningchen and Qing Ning left the Imperial Edict Palace when the sun was setting. They walked out of the palace together. In front of the Imperial Edict Palace, Xia Qi watched them leave. His eyes were full of reluctance. He knew that his master only came back to take a look and would not stay for long. Outside the city, in the mausoleum of Emperor Xia, the maple forest was red like fire. Ningchen and Qing Ning walked directly to the tomb of Zhang Sun. In front of the maple forest, they stopped and looked at the tomb in front of them. They knelt down together. Knowing destiny, who did not kneel to heaven and earth and did not worship gods and Buddhas, at this moment, put down their pride and bowed. My lady, we are back. Their voices echoed in front of the mausoleum. Ningchen's eyes flashed with undetectable tears. After a moment, he quietly hid it. After a lifetime of running around, fighting gods, slaying demons, and fighting for half of his life, the most precious memory in his heart was the warm smile when he first entered the palace. In front of the mausoleum, the two knelt for a full 2 hours. As usual, they told Zhang Sun everything that had happened in the past 100 years. In the west, the sun had set and night had fallen. The stars dotted the sky. It was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. The story of 100 years was so long. Ningchen knelt for 1 hour and also talked for 2 hours. Nyang Nyang, the Buddha of the Buddha country, said that humans have afterlives. Xian Yu's afterlife would appear 1,000 years later. After I settle the matters here, I will go and search for her. Nyang Nyang, spirit in the heavens, please bless me to find Xian Yu's reincarnation as soon as possible. After talking for 2 hours, Ningchen stood up reluctantly. He looked at the mausoleum longingly and left with the woman beside him. Sister Qing Ning, are we getting old? After leaving the mausoleum, on the way north, Ningchen whispered. Why do you say so? Qing Ning asked. When people get old, they become long-winded, Ningchen replied. Maybe. Qing Ning smiled faintly and said, we are almost 200 years old. After living for so long, even if our faces are not old, our hearts are old. I really don't want to be old. Ningchen looked into the distance and sighed. Back then, when he was in his prime, he could pass judgment on the world. That youthful arrogance was too nostalgic. And the others are already standing on their own. Our era is over, Qing Ning said softly. Ningchen smiled lightly and said, all right, let's not talk about this heavy topic. Let's go to Northern Meng and take a look. I don't know what that girl Mingyue is thinking again. She didn't want to be the emperor of Northern Meng, but after passing the throne, she disappeared without a trace. Other than you and Fan Lingyue, who else can control that child? Being able to persevere on the throne of the north for so many years has already made me see you in a new light, Qing Ning said helplessly. Back then, Mingyu and now were both lawless masters. Without Ning Chen's discipline, they could overturn the heavens. Girls need to be raised well. Ning Chen said with a smile. Mingyu and Qin were different from Qi. That brat would not take the wrong path if he was strict with him. As for Mingyu and Yin, as long as they understood the principles of human conduct, he did not want to restrict them too much. As the two of them chatted, they walked towards the north, leaving the mountains and rivers behind them. The two of them did not deliberately walk too fast. However, Wang Jing's speed was still unbelievable. Before dawn, the two of them appeared in the Northern Meng Imperial City and walked directly towards the Northern Meng Imperial Palace. In front of the Northern Meng Imperial Palace, Ningchen stopped and looked at the palace gate that had not been opened yet. After a moment, he continued to walk forward. I'll wait for you here, Qing Ning said. Ningchen thought for a moment and nodded. Okay. As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Chen's figure disappeared and flew into the Northern Meng Imperial Palace. In the Imperial Palace, the sky was about to brighten. The servants and maids were already busy. Ning Chen appeared and released his divine sense. After searching for a moment, Ning Chen collected his divine sense and frowned slightly. She was really not in the Imperial Palace. Where did this girl run off to? After thinking for a few breaths, Ning Chen's figure disappeared again and flew forward. In a quiet pavilion in the rear palace, a woman in palace attire was playing the zither. Her face was beautiful and there was no trace of age on it. Su Fian, the descendant of the former imperial bloodline of a dead country, escaped from the Great Xia dynasty because of knowing destiny and became the empress of the Northern Meng Imperial Palace. Now, she was the Empress Dowager. Her desire to restore the country had long faded with the changes of the world. At this moment, Ning Chen appeared in front of the pavilion. He looked at the woman in front of him and did not rush to disturb her. In the pavilion, after the song ended, Su Fian stopped playing the zither and looked at the white-haired man outside the pavilion. She said, "Since you're here, come in." "Miss Su, we haven't seen each other for 100 years and you're still so beautiful." Ning Chen walked in and smiled. "We haven't seen each other for 100 years and you've learned how to talk." Su Fian stood up and said softly, "When old friends meet, I always feel very close and I can't help but speak casually. Miss Su, please don't blame me." Ning Chen smiled. Su Fian nodded and said, "I'm also happy to see old friends. However, There's one thing that you and Her Majesty have lied to me about. Shouldn't you give me an explanation? Oh. Ningchen was puzzled. He said, "What is it?" Su Fian looked at the man in front of her quietly. After a long time, she smiled and said, "Jimingmar, your schemes are deeper than the sea. A big lie that deceived the world for 100 years. The Northern Meng monarch is actually a woman. If Her Majesty didn't tell me personally, I would have been kept in the dark until my death." Ningchen was silent. After a while, he sighed and said, "I had no choice. The Northern Meng can't fall into chaos. Otherwise, the world will fall into endless war again. Miss Su, thank you for keeping this a secret all these years." Su Fian smiled and put away the zither in front of her. She said, "Jiming Marquis, you're old." Ningchen was startled when he heard this. Then he smiled and said, "I've worked hard. In the end, I've aged faster." "So, I've won this time?" Su Fian smiled. "Yes, you've won." Ningchen smiled. "When you let go of your hatred, you've already won. Because I can't let go of my responsibilities, I'm destined to grow old faster than you. Unfortunately, even though I've won, I can't be happy." Su Fian smiled. "What I want to see is the Jiming Marquis who showed off his abilities in the past. With the power of one person, you quelled the chaos of the Imperial City. That night in the Imperial City of the Xia dynasty, your abilities made me lose the confidence to fight back. The Jiming Marquis of the past was so dazzling. Now, his hair was white and he was almost in his twilight years." "Where's Mingyu?" Ningchen asked. "She left 20 years ago." Su Fian calmed herself down and said calmly, "She didn't have much attachment to the throne. After the Northern Meng settled down, she passed down the throne and left the Northern Meng with Zijing." "Did she say where she went?" Ningchen frowned. Su Fian shook her head. "In this world, the person who understands His Majesty the most is you and not me. Isn't that right?" Ningchen sighed. "This girl. Forget it." Mingyu had already grown up. He couldn't interfere too much. Outside the Northern Meng Imperial Palace, the sky was about to brighten. The palace gates slowly opened. In front of the Imperial Palace, Qin Ning waited quietly. She didn't look anxious at all. Not long after, a white-haired figure in plain clothes walked out from the Imperial Palace. "Is there any news?" Qin Ning asked with a smile. "She left 20 years ago." Ningchen replied. "But she has Zijing by her side. She should be fine. Are we going to look for her?" Qin Ning asked. Ningchen replied. "She's grown up. She should walk the path she decided on herself." Qin Ning nodded. "Then let's go." Ningchen nodded and replied. After a short return, Ningchen and Qin Ning left and disappeared. Several months later, at the border of the All-Heaven Starfield and Luojia Starfield, the Reverence Moon Ancient Ground. The two of them appeared and entered the divine restriction above the ancient ground. On the altar, the thousands of clansmen sensed the return of the High Priestess. They immediately looked up. "Welcome, High Priestess." Tens of thousands of moon-worshipping clansmen saluted respectfully. In the void, Ningchen's figure descended from the sky and walked towards the altar step by step. Above the altar, moonlight gathered and the moon god's image appeared. "Welcome back, High Priestess." "Greetings, Moon God." Ningchen bowed and greeted her courteously. After several decades of experience, High Priestess has become even more weathered, Moon God sighed. "It's been a long time." "Moon God, you haven't lost your elegance," Ningchen said with a smile. "That senior of yours has left," said Moon God. Ningchen nodded. "When senior left, I sensed his sordid intent." "High Priestess, your body is on the verge of collapse. Your cultivation will weaken with each passing day. The resentment of hundreds of millions of living beings has destroyed your martial foundation. Come to the divine realm. Perhaps you'll find a way to recover your cultivation," Moon God said with a serious expression. Hearing that, Ningchen narrowed his eyes. He said, "Divine realm? Could it be that the world of the gods is going to be connected to the mortal realm?" "Not yet." Moon God shook her head. "However, I can feel that the laws of the mortal realm are gradually recovering. Now, it's getting easier for my avatar to descend to the mortal realm. Perhaps, in another 1,000 or 10,000 years, the gods will truly descend to the mortal realm. Since the world of the gods and the mortal realm are not connected, how can humans go to the divine realm? Ningchen continued to ask. Through the clouds and ascension, Moon God said calmly. It's easier for humans to enter the divine realm than for gods to enter the mortal realm. Just like in the ancient times, humans ascended to the celestial realm. As long as they have enough cultivation and have the guidance of the gods, they can enter the divine realm. High Priestess, you're the most qualified person in the mortal realm to enter the divine realm. Now, your cultivation hasn't completely dissipated. Perhaps this is your last chance to enter the divine realm. Ningchen was silent. After a long while, he shook his head. No, I'm waiting for someone. How long? Moon God frowned. 900 years, Ningchen replied. Hearing that, Moon God frowned again. She said in a low voice, 900 years is too long. By then, your cultivation will have already dissipated. Even if you want to ascend to the divine realm, it will be impossible. High Priestess, you only have one chance. Don't let yourself regret it. Ningchen smiled. Ascending to the celestial realm and becoming a god are not my dreams. Compared to these, I'd rather wait in the mortal realm for 900 years. Chapter 1324. In the Reverence Moon ancient land, the phoenix body stood quietly on the altar, watching the main body and Qing Ning leave. In the starry sky, 2 streaks of light flashed by and disappeared in the blink of an eye. A month later, Knowing Destiny returned from the Z-Wei divine realm. The kings of the divine realm bowed respectfully to the return of the realm lord. Ningchen walked over to the peak surrounded by thousands of floating islands. He stood on the peak and watched over the mortal world. Behind him, the wheelchair creaked as Peacock appeared and accompanied him quietly. 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. In the first 100 years after the demon calamity, the human race had gone through the most difficult period of reconstruction. In the past 100 years, the kings of the human race had been running around to quell the war and eliminate the remnants of the demon domain. They were busy with the reconstruction of the human race. On the peak of the Z-Wei divine realm, there were battle reports coming in from time to time. Ningchen stood quietly in front of the peak and watched the mortal world, but he rarely spoke. The battle reports were all handled by Peacock herself. The divine realm Holy Maiden had shown rare talent and strategy. After the first 100 years, the war in the 4 directions had basically calmed down, and the reconstruction of the human race was completed one after another. In front of the Immortals' Peak, the kings of the underworld came one after another to bid farewell. It was time for the 10 kings of hell to part once again. Knowing Destiny will meet again if fate wills it. On the Z-Wei Divine Mountain, Xia Zi and Lufei, who were the last to bid farewell, looked at the man in front of them and said, "We'll meet again if fate wills it." Ningchen replied and said softly. After bidding farewell, the 2 turned around and left. In front of the peak, Ningchen looked at the 2 figures and his eyes flashed with emotions. Finally, they left. The kings of hell all left and returned to their original paths of life. On the peak, Knowing Destiny stood silently as the cold wind blew past. It was bone-chilling. After a long time, Ningchen sighed softly and turned around to watch over the mortal world. In the distance, Peacock quietly looked at the white-haired man in front of the peak. Her calm eyes were calm. Now, he had truly become a qualified Z-Wei Divine Realm Lord. Time flew. The second 100 years after the demon calamity had arrived. The major galaxies were recuperating and the mortal world was once again bustling. On the Z-Wei Divine Mountain, Knowing Destiny stood quietly for 200 years and never left. His eyes looked at the mortal world in the distance and his white hair was stained with wind and frost. Over the past 200 years, Knowing Destiny had lost more than half of his cultivation, and it was difficult for him to recover his destroyed foundation. The resentment of billions of living beings was enormous. Even a god would find it difficult to bear, let alone a human body. However, once the Devil Slayer art was completed, he knew his fate and had no regrets. In the Red Luan galaxy, no one from the Devil Realm walked out of the passageway between the two realms. The existence of the current Purple Myrtle Realm Master was enough to intimidate hundreds of races. Soon, the 2nd century passed, and the 3rd century arrived. The human world had basically returned to how it was before the war, and the pain of the demonic realm was gradually forgotten by the people. In this 100 years, the martial arts of the mortal world developed rapidly. The younger generation of experts emerged one after another. After the chaotic times, a great era was about to arrive. Boom! In the depths of an extremely distant star region, a terrifying imperial Tao tribulation appeared. The radiance of lightning suffused half of the star region, and it was a world-shocking sight. After 300 years, there was finally another sovereign in the human world who had proven his Tao, announcing that the human race had officially entered a prosperous era. A few months later, in front of the Crepe Myrtle Divine Peak, golden light shone brightly, and the human sovereign appeared. After proving his way, he first came to see the current master of the Crepe Myrtle Divine Realm. On the high peak, Ningchen turned around and looked at the newly proven sovereign in front of him. He said, "Congratulations." The human sovereign bowed respectfully and said, "Back then, during the demon-slaying battle, I still can't forget your demeanor. I wonder if I'll have the honor of learning a move from you." Ningchen quietly looked at the human sovereign in front of him. After a long time, he nodded slightly and replied, "Sure." As soon as he finished speaking, the sword pressure spread silently in the Crepe Myrtle Divine Realm. It was calm and uncontested. The selfless sword of selflessness. The human sovereign's expression was slightly serious. The laws of the sovereign path around him spread and gathered crazily, turning into a barrier in front of him. In the next moment, sword light gathered on the high peak, and an ordinary sword blade appeared. After an instant, it broke through the air. After the prosperity, the sword that returned to its original state was invincible. In front of the human sovereign, the laws of the sovereign path disintegrated, and it was difficult to block the selfless sword. In front of the human sovereign, the sword blade stopped and quietly dissipated. It was a shocking scene. Even someone as strong as the sovereign path could not block the sword. The human sovereign's heart surged. After a long time, he came back to his senses and said respectfully, "I admire your ability, Realm Master. You've just attained the sovereign path, and your realm is still unstable. Go back and consolidate your cultivation base. Don't leave any unnecessary hidden dangers." Ningchen waved his hand and dispersed the sword pressure that filled the world. He said calmly. When the human sovereign heard this, he bowed again and retreated. After a short interlude, the Crepe Myrtle Divine Peak returned to silence. Ningchen turned around and stood quietly in front of the peak, watching over the mortal world. The 3rd century gradually passed. At the beginning of a prosperous world, the humans prospered. When the 4th century arrived, martial arts in the mortal world flourished. Martial artists practiced martial arts, and scholars also began to practice martial arts. With the rise of martial arts, battles appeared. In the various star regions, wars occurred frequently, and the flames of war rose everywhere. On the Crepe Myrtle Divine Peak, Ningchen looked at the mortal world that was filled with flames and smoke. He did not interfere and just let it develop. Finally, when the 4th century was about to end, another human sovereign had attained the path, shocking all sides. The moment the new sovereign attained the path, in the distant starry sky, black phoenix flames spread and rushed forward. At the same time, on the Crepe Myrtle Divine Peak, Ningchen spoke and gave the first order in 400 years. In the deity realm, on an inconspicuous floating island, young Master Xiaobai, who was dressed in white, walked out and respectfully accepted the order. The current Dragon Emperor reappeared in the mortal world and chased after the black phoenix. In the starry sky, a black and a white stream of light sped past. They were extremely fast and disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the depths of an ancient star region, lightning filled the air. After experiencing a great tribulation, the newly attained Sovereign Path Emperor walked out exhausted. His body was covered in blood. It was obvious that the great tribulation of the sovereign path was not easy. Just as the sovereign was about to leave, black phoenix flames spread in front of him. The cold and heavy pressure made one's hair stand on end. After a few breaths, the black phoenix appeared and stopped the human sovereign. "It's you." The human sovereign looked at the black phoenix in front of him, and his expression froze. He had seen this person during the demon-slaying battle. He was extremely powerful. "Hand over the sovereign's origin, and I'll spare your life," the black phoenix said coldly. "Wishful thinking." The human sovereign snorted coldly. He forcefully suppressed his heavily injured body, and the laws of the sovereign path spread out around him. "You're overestimating yourself," the black phoenix said coldly. He took a step forward and instantly arrived in front of the human sovereign. Black flames swept out, devouring the heavens and destroying the earth. At this critical moment, a white stream of light sped over from afar. A dragon's roar filled the sky and blocked the black flames that filled the sky. Seeing this, the black phoenix's expression froze. The Dragon Emperor. In front of him, amidst the surging aftershocks, young Master Xiaobai walked out. He held the divine spear transformed from the Dragon Emperor sword in his hand, and his imperial might shook the heavens and the earth. As expected, the Region Master was right. It's easy to change a leopard, but it's hard to change a person's nature. You're ultimately a scourge. Young Master Xiaobai looked at the black phoenix in front of him and said coldly, "The Crepe Myrtle Region Master, I'll take his life sooner or later. Today, I'll start with you." As soon as he finished speaking, the black phoenix moved. Black flames swept through the 9 heavens and swallowed the Dragon Emperor in front of him. Young Master Xiaobai's expression froze. His dragon's might rose as he faced the attack. The dragon and the phoenix clashed. The aftershocks of the great battle were destructive, and the entire starry sky shook violently. The battle was evenly matched, and it was difficult to determine the winner. It gradually evolved into a battle of 1,000 days. For a time, no one could do anything to the other. On the peak of the Crepe Myrtle Divine Realm, Ningchen quietly watched the great battle in the distant star domain. There was not the slightest ripple in his calm eyes. "Raise your swords." With a raise of the sword intent quickly spread out from all sides of the mortal realm. Wherever the sword intent arrived, 10,000 swords were unsheathed. 1 domain, 2 domains. The true emperor of the sword spoke, and billions of swords were unsheathed in the mortal realm and flew toward the horizon. It was a shocking scene. All the 4th realm powerhouses in the mortal realm looked at the horizon with shocked expressions. Is this the sword of the Crepe Myrtle Region Master? It's really terrifying. Everyone watched. In the starry sky, billions of swords pierced through the air. They were endless and limitless. At the end of the distant star domain, thousands of sword lights broke through. The majestic sword intent was shocking. Crepe Myrtle Region Master. The black phoenix sensed something. He turned around and looked at the billions of swords that were speeding toward him. His face was filled with shock and anger. The billions of swords had the power to destroy the world. They directly cut through the black flames in the sky and swallowed the black phoenix. In the terrifying sword current, the black phoenix used all his strength and performed the Phoenix clan's life-saving technique. The swords pierced through his body. However, the sword current was endless, surpassing the limits of time and space. Ugh! The secret technique's time was up. The black phoenix's figure appeared. The sword current pierced through his body, bringing out a waterfall of dazzling blood. After a few breaths, the billions of swords disappeared. The black phoenix's figure fell silently and was unconscious. Young Master Xiaobai went forward, grabbed the severely injured black phoenix, and left. In the Crepe Myrtle Divine Realm, Ningchen stopped. Fatigue flashed in his eyes. "Lord!" In the sky above the Divine Realm, a space-time vortex swirled. Young Master Xiaobai returned with the black phoenix and bowed respectfully. "Thank you for your hard work." Ningchen turned around and said, "Fortunately, I had the help of the Lord. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for me to capture him." Young Master Xiaobai said seriously, "How will the Lord deal with this person?" seal his cultivation and suppress him under the crepe myrtle mountain, Ningchen said calmly. Yes. Young Master Xiaobai took the order and left with the Black Phoenix. It has been 400 years. In front of the mountain, Ningchen murmured softly. His tired eyes looked at the world. Suddenly he coughed violently. Red blood flowed out of his fingers and dyed his clothes red. His roots were basically destroyed. In order to capture the Black Phoenix, Ningchen's body couldn't bear the burden and began to show signs of abnormality. Lord, you can't use martial arts anymore. Behind him, the wheelchair creaked. Peacock appeared and reminded him. Only this time. Ningchen put down his blood-stained hand and said calmly. Peacock nodded and didn't say anything else. She turned around and left. Jiming Marquis was without a doubt the most powerful of the crepe myrtle realm lords. Before entering the imperial path, he was able to suppress all the enemies in the world. Today, after 400 years, his strength was comparable to that of the ancient deities. He didn't need to rely on the power of the world. Unfortunately, he couldn't use his sword anymore. Chapter 1325. In front of the peak of Ziwei Holy Realm, a knowing destiny state cultivator stood there quietly for 400 years. The 400 years were long and silent. Only those who stood at the peak could understand the loneliness of being at the top. The most powerful man in the world, the first person in Ziwei Holy Realm for thousands of years, the strength of knowing destiny state had surpassed the limits of the human world. No one walked out of the demonic realm. In the past 400 years, the human world became more and more prosperous. Under the deterrence of Ziwei Holy Realm, all the evil people chose not to come out. In the human world, at the end of the distant star region, a heavenly demon in a dark red battle suit stood quietly. Chaotic demonic chi surged around him. After 400 years, he had finally completely devoured the power of the heavenly demon lord. However, Shen Luo did not make a move in the past 400 years. He knew that the Marquis of knowing destiny state was too powerful. He was invincible. The end of the Black Phoenix was the best lesson. No one could block that sword, not even a god. After a long time, Shen Luo disappeared again and covered all his breath. On the peak of Ziwei Holy Realm, Ningchen felt something. He looked at the distant star region and coldness flashed in his eyes. Was it an illusion? The 400 years of frequent events in the world passed quickly in the flames of war and glory. The 500 years came and the human world gradually returned to peace. The pain of the demonic calamity had been completely forgotten by the world. Except for the human cultivators who had experienced the demonic calamity, almost no one remembered this terrible calamity. Time was always the best weapon to erase pain. 500 years was too long for the mortals. On Ziwei Holy Peak, Ningchen looked at the human world and witnessed countless joys and sorrows. His eyes became more and more weathered. In the past 500 years, a peach tree had taken root on Ziwei Holy Peak. In March every year, the peach blossoms bloomed and the fragrance was intoxicating. In the past 100 years, the human world had been relatively peaceful. Not many major events happened. The world was peaceful in the 100 years. Under Ziwei Holy Peak, the suppressed Black Phoenix woke up. The iron chain locked his body. On the iron chain, the talisman was destroyed, suppressing Black Phoenix's body. Lord of Ziwei Holy Realm, you are a hypocrite who burns the bridge after crossing the river. One day, you will die a horrible death. The Black Phoenix roared angrily, its voice reverberating throughout the crepe myrtle divine realm. Its hatred was bone-piercing, making one's hair stand on end. On the peak, Ningchen stood there quietly, as if he didn't hear anything. After 500 years of ups and downs, his heart was no longer affected by anything. Realm Lord. At the back, Peacock came over in her wheelchair and bowed. What is it? Ningchen said in front of the mountain. My time is up, Peacock said softly. Hearing this, Ningchen's body trembled slightly. Sadness flashed in his eyes as he nodded and said, Go. Peacock smiled, turned her wheelchair and left. At the end of the 100 years, the peacock would transform into the Tao. After the demonic tribulation was quelled, the heavenly mandate would end and it would return to the world. On this day, in the crepe myrtle divine realm, the five-colored divine light illuminated the sky, and the shadow of a giant peacock appeared. It was so beautiful that it made one's heart ache. In front of the divine sword, Ningchen looked at the gradually fading shadow of the peacock in the sky. He clenched his fists, and drops of blood seeped out from his fingertips. It was so glaring. Time was merciless, aging people, youth faded away in an instant. Even the dazzling peacock of the immortal state couldn't stop the heavenly cycle. The transformation of the peacock into the Tao symbolized the complete end of an era in the human world. A new era had quietly begun. The 600 years had arrived. At the beginning of a new era, the human world and martial arts ushered in a new era of glory. The human race prospered and so did the martial arts. On the major planets, divine dynasties and martial arts sects sprung up one after another. A golden era had begun. In this 100 years, the human world had a new emperor. The Thunder Tribulation was vast and powerful. It was a shocking scene. However, in the past few hundred years, the crepe myrtle divine realm had become more and more low-key and had disappeared from the world's eyes. The new emperor of the human race didn't visit again. In the past 600 years, there were more and more emperors in the human world. The human race's martial arts prospered and gradually didn't need the existence of the immortal state to deter the primitive demon realm. On the crepe myrtle divine peak in the immortal state, the peach blossom tree bloomed and withered year after year. The peach blossom tree that had accompanied the knowing destiny state for 100 years suddenly stopped blooming at the end of the 100 years. The branches of the peach blossom tree also started to wither. In the last year of the 100 years, the withered peach blossom tree bloomed again. It was so beautiful and the fragrance of the flowers filled the entire peak. In front of the peak, Ningchen looked at the peach blossom tree not far away and sighed softly. "Thank you." With a word of thanks, the peach blossom tree suddenly swayed. The peach blossoms flew and scattered all over the sky. In this year, the peach blossom tree died and came to the end of its life. The 700 years arrived in the sky full of flying peach blossoms. The human world, which had been peaceful for hundreds of years, finally had a big event. At the beginning of the 100 years, a human emperor suddenly died. His blood and chi scattered in the starry sky, shocking the world. "Master!" On the crepe myrtle divine peak, young Master Xiao Bai appeared and bowed. "Go and find out what happened." In front of the peak, Ningchen said. "Okay." Young Master Xiao Bai nodded and disappeared from the immortal state. After the Dragon Emperor left, Ningchen stood in front of the peak quietly. A serious look flashed in his eyes. In the past 600 years, there had been 3 emperors in the human race. Logically speaking, the original power of heaven and earth wasn't enough to support the 3 emperors. Since the second emperor had proven his path, he felt strange. Now, he could basically confirm that there was an unknown change in the human world. Perhaps, in the near future, there would be more emperors in the human race. The sudden death of the human emperor this time might have something to do with the changes in heaven and earth. In the interstellar space, the white dragon sped past and rushed toward the distant star region. A few months later, in the depths of the starry sky, young Master Xiao Bai appeared. Looking at the scattered corpses of emperors in front of him, his eyes narrowed slightly. There were no signs of battle in the surroundings. Did they die in one move? In this world, other than the master, could anyone else do this? Young Master Xiao Bai went forward and checked the corpses of the emperors. His expression became more and more solemn. This power was so unfamiliar. He had never seen it before. It didn't seem to belong to the human world. Boom. At this moment, a huge crack appeared in the interstellar space and spread rapidly, devouring it. The sudden change made young Master Xiao Bai's expression sink. He turned into a white dragon and retreated quickly. At this moment, a giant hand reached out from the crack, spanning hundreds of miles to capture the white dragon. Roar! Unable to dodge, young Master Xiao Bai roared at the sky. The dragon's breath swallowed like water and met the huge hand head-on. Boom! The huge hand slapped down, and the dragon's breath dissipated. At this moment of crisis, young Master Xiaobai's body shone with golden light. The Dragon Emperor sword appeared and automatically protected its master. Crack! The ear-piercing sound of the sword cracking rang out. The dragon race's divine weapon collapsed, unable to withstand the terrifying power. After a moment of delay, young Master Xiaobai flew thousands of miles away, avoiding the fatal palm strike. 100 miles away, young Master Xiaobai's figure appeared. He staggered and vomited a mouthful of blood. The Dragon Emperor sword was destroyed, and he suffered a backlash. Young Master Xiaobai looked at the huge crack behind him in shock. What was that just now? Was it the heavenly path or a god fiend? With danger by the side, young Master Xiaobai did not dare to stay. His figure flashed and quickly left. On the peak of the crepe myrtle divine realm, Ning Chen felt the abnormal fluctuations at the end of the starry sky and narrowed his eyes. What happened? A few months later, in the divine realm, the space-time vortex stirred. Young Master Xiaobai fell from the sky and smashed onto the divine peak. The blood-stained Dragon Emperor's internal organs were severely injured. Even in the Demon Slayer battle, he had not suffered such terrifying injuries. Ning Chen turned around and frowned slightly. He raised his right hand. Suddenly, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the divine realm surged and flowed into young Master Xiaobai's body. After a long time, young Master Xiaobai opened his eyes and looked at the master of the divine realm in front of him. He bowed respectfully and said with a pale face, "Thank you for saving me, Master of the Divine Realm." What happened? Ning Chen asked. The end of the Wanxiang star field. Young Master Xiaobai recounted what happened a few months ago in detail. That huge hand was too terrifying. It could even destroy the Dragon Emperor divine weapon that he cultivated with his life. It was really incomprehensible. After listening, Ning Chen's eyes flashed with a serious look. The changes of heaven and earth had begun. Was this a blessing or a curse for the human race? Go back and rest. I will handle this matter personally, Ning Chen said. Yes. Young Master Xiaobai obeyed and left. After the Dragon Emperor left, Ning Chen glanced at the floating island in the distance and said softly, "I will go and take care of something. I will be back soon." Go ahead. On the floating island in the distance, the woman in the green dress nodded. After getting permission, Ning Chen took a step forward and disappeared into the void. After 600 years, knowing destiny left the divine realm for the first time. Outside the divine realm, a white-haired figure in plain clothes walked out. Although his face was still young, it was full of hardships. In order to find out the secret of the changes of heaven and earth, knowing destiny came out personally. After a few breaths, he disappeared into the depths of the starry sky. At the end of the Wanxiang star field, huge spatial cracks crisscrossed. Each crack was tens of thousands of feet long and bottomless. On this day, Ning Chen appeared in front of the collapsing spacetime. He looked forward and stopped. It was not the first time he saw this familiar scene. Ning Chen raised his hand and sword qi gathered in the sky and broke through the void. The ordinary sword broke through the spatial cracks and swept to an unknown place. The sword qi flew into the bottomless spatial crack, but it did not cause the slightest ripple before it was completely devoured. Ning Chen stopped and his eyes narrowed. He stood quietly in front of the spatial cracks and waited for changes to appear. He waited for dozens of years. The human world flourished several times, but there was still no change in the spatial cracks. Ning Chen sighed and no longer waited. He turned and left. Not long after knowing destiny left, a powerful force appeared in the depths of the spatial cracks. After a few breaths, it disappeared again. Ning Chen returned in the crepe myrtle divine realm. On the floating island in the distance, the woman in the green dress opened her eyes and asked softly, "Are you okay?" "Just a false alarm," Ning Chen replied. "That's good." Qing Ning nodded and did not ask any more questions. Ning Chen walked to the peak and looked at the Wanxiang star field in the distance. He could not hide the seriousness in his eyes. The giant palm mentioned by the Dragon Emperor could destroy the Dragon Emperor sword. It was obvious that its power was terrifying. Such an existence must have its own will. If it wanted to avoid him, it would be difficult for him to find it. The 100 years were not peaceful. The emperors of the human race fell and the dragon emperor was severely injured. However, as time passed, everything was gradually covered by time. The 800 years came unstoppably. Chapter 1326. The Ziwei Divine Peak had waited for 700 years for the knowing destiny state. The wind and frost on its body were so thick that it could not disperse. His face had not changed for 700 years, and he was still as young as before. Only the vicissitudes of life in his eyes increased every year. When the 800 years came, Ning Chen's cultivation had completely dissipated, and he looked no different from a mortal. However, in the immortal realm, every fourth realm cultivator knew that the strength of the Ziwei Divine Realm Master was not something that could be affected by cultivation. This was also why the emperors of the demonic realm did not dare to invade the human race even though they knew that the Realm Master had been severely injured in the war against the demons. It could be said that as long as the Realm Master was still standing on the peak, no one in the human world would dare to invade. In the 800 years, the martial Tao of the human world had developed further. The Yama kings of the underworld who had embarked on their own paths were finally the first to attain the sovereign path. To everyone's surprise, after 800 years, the first to attain the Tao was neither Xia Zi, who was the strongest in martial arts, nor Prince Qi, who had the highest cultivation. It was the current Buddha Lord of the Buddhist kingdom, King Aaron. On this day, in the sky above the Buddhist kingdom, thousands of Buddhas sang as King Aaron attained the Tao. The earth-shattering scene shocked everyone. The Yama kings of the underworld who were scattered across the major stellar regions looked at the Buddhist kingdom with strange expressions. They did not expect King Aaron to walk in front of everyone. Why didn't I see that this girl was so fierce? In the heavenly sacred city, Luo Xingchen, who was cultivating in seclusion, opened his eyes and looked surprised. "You know her?" Outside the stone room where Luo Xingchen was cultivating in seclusion, the seventh divine general said lightly. "Yes." Luo Xingchen nodded and replied, "She is a cultivator of the underworld and the current lord of the Buddhist kingdom, King Aaron." "The Buddhist kingdom?" The seventh divine general murmured softly. The Buddhist kingdom had been prosperous for the past 700 years. Attaining the Tao with the power of faith of all living beings was a shortcut. "It's Aaron." In the starry sky of the Prime Minister's pavilion, Luo Fei stopped and looked into the distance. The Buddha's heart and the devil's nature. "It's Tao," Xia Zi replied calmly and said, "Let's go." The heavens and earth are changing, and the human emperors are emerging endlessly. We must improve our strength as soon as possible to deal with the future changes. "Yes." Lu Fei nodded and walked towards the depths of the starry skies. In the crepe myrtle divine realm, in front of the high peak, Ning Chen looked at the mortal world. His expression did not change much because of AI Rance Dao. Apart from him, the other kings of the underworld were all extraordinary in terms of talent and experience. All they needed was an opportunity to become an emperor. When the time comes, Qin Yi firmly believed that the glory of the kings of hell would be enough to move the entire mortal realm. Aaron was the first, but she definitely wouldn't be the last. He would stay in the immortal state and witness the amazement of the kings of the underworld. The 800 years of the golden age of martial arts gradually passed under the glory of the ruler of the Buddhist kingdom, Era Mingwang. The 900 years soon arrived. At the end of the century, the hearts of all the kings in the deity realm became heavy. They knew that this was the last 100 years that the realm master would stay in the deity realm. Back then, when the domain lord came up the mountain, he made a promise that he would watch over the world for 900 years. Now, the last 100 years were finally coming. "Gu Yao, you don't have much time left," Ning Chen said softly in front of the crepe myrtle divine mountain. In the distant star region, there were thousands of thunderbolts that turned into a sea of lightning, drowning the figure of the ascendant. In the sea of lightning, Lord Gu Yao in a blue robe stood in the air. Divine suns rose around his body and blocked the heavenly tribulation. Lord Gu Yao, the top overlord in the mortal realm in the past, was finally going through the emperor tribulation. The heavenly tribulation was endless. Lord Gu Yao's body was surrounded by divine flames and his extreme yang cultivation art was displayed for the first time. The 9 suns burned the sky and blocked the heavenly tribulation. The heavenly Tao was ruthless and killed the cultivators in the mortal realm. Gu Yao was going through the tribulation. On the crepe myrtle divine mountain, Ning Chen looked into the distance and his calm eyes finally flickered. After he left, the deity realm needed a new realm master. Lord Gu Yao, who had mastered the time restriction, was the best candidate. Gu Yao's tribulation took 10 years. On the crepe myrtle divine mountain, Ning Chen also waited for 10 years. 10 years later, Gu Yao returned and bowed respectfully in front of the mountain. Realm Master, I'm back. After returning, Gu Yao's body was surrounded by dazzling golden light. It was as if a god had descended to the mortal realm. His aura was vigorous and shocking. Ning Chen turned around and looked at Lord Gu Yao in front of him. There was a rare trace of relief in his tired eyes. You've just become an emperor and still need time to consolidate your cultivation. There's no need to be so formal. Go back and rest, Ning Chen said. Thank you, Realm Master. I'll take my leave. Lord Gu Yao bowed respectfully and then disappeared from the crepe myrtle divine mountain. The deity realm's last wish had been fulfilled. Ning Chen also put down the heavy burden in his heart. He turned around and looked at the mortal realm with longing in his eyes. After nearly 1,000 years, the day he had been waiting for was finally coming. On the floating island in the distance, Qing Ning, who had been in seclusion for 800 years, walked out and left the floating island. Half a day later, Qing Ning came to the divine mountain. She looked at the white-haired man in plain clothes and said, I'm leaving. In front of the mountain, Ning Chen heard her and paused. He turned around and looked at her. Sister Qing Ning, where are you going? My cultivation has been stagnant for 100 years. I want to go out and have a walk, Qing Ning said softly. How long? Ning Chen asked. Maybe 10 years, maybe 100 years, I don't know, Qing Ning replied. Ning Chen was silent. After a long time, he sighed in his heart. He looked at the woman in front of him and said with a smile, Be careful on the road. You too. Qing Ning responded and looked at the former deeply. She didn't say anything more and turned around to leave. At the foot of the mountain, Ruoshi waited quietly. She didn't go up the mountain to say goodbye. Let's go. Not long after, Qing Ning came and said. Ruoshi nodded and left together. In front of the mountain, Ning Chen looked at the backs of the two and sighed again. Sister Qing Ning, will the young master get what he wants? Outside the divine mountain, Ruoshi finally couldn't hold back the tears in her eyes. He will. Qing Ning nodded. That's good. Ruoshi smiled and raised her hand to wipe the tears on her face. We can't be the young master's concern. Concern? Qing Ning looked back with a complicated expression. If their departure could relieve him of his worries, then he wouldn't have chosen to wait for 1,000 years. 1,000 years was a long time. Cultivators pursued longevity and immortality. It was everyone's dream. What he gave up was not as simple as 1,000 years. 1,000 years ago, with the help of the moon god, he could have ascended to the celestial realm. However, he chose to wait for 1,000 years in the mortal world. After 1,000 years, his cultivation was gone and his foundation was completely destroyed. It was almost impossible for him to enter the celestial realm again. On the path of martial arts, it's easy to recover one's lost cultivation. But if one's foundation is destroyed, it's almost equivalent to cutting off all hope. This 1,000 years was the limit of what he could support. After losing all his cultivation and foundation, his lifespan wouldn't be much longer than a mortal's. After Qing Ning and Ruoshi left, Ji Ming's thin figure appeared even lonelier. Day after day, year after year, he waited for the 1,000-year period to come. Gradually, the crepe myrtle peak was covered with fallen leaves. In the last 100 years, the vicissitudes of life in Ning Chen's eyes couldn't be dispelled. In the celestial realm, on the floating islands, all the kings who were in seclusion came out one after another. In this last 100 years, they didn't go into seclusion again. 900 years of ups and downs, from the Demon Slayer War to today, the Realm Lord had guarded the mortal world for a full 900 years. In these 900 years, the mortal world truly entered a golden age. It can be said that these years under the Realm Lord's watch was the most glorious period of the human race since ancient times. Time flew by. This year, on the Crepe Myrtle Peak, Ji Ming, who had waited for 1,000 years, finally withdrew his gaze from the mortal world. 1,000 years had passed, and the promise of 900 years had been fulfilled. Ningchen put down all the burdens on his body and turned to walk down the mountain. In the celestial realm, on the thousands of floating islands, the kings sensed his arrival and saluted. "Farewell, Realm Lord. Farewell, Realm Lord." A series of farewells resounded throughout the Crepe Myrtle celestial realm. The kings saluted and thanked the Realm Lord for his 900 years of protection. "Honorable Gu Yao, from now on, the mortal world is in your hands." Under the Crepe Myrtle Peak, Ningchen said calmly and then walked out of the celestial realm. "Gu Yao, honorable decree." On the Crepe Myrtle Peak, Honorable Gu Yao appeared and saluted respectfully. Outside the celestial realm, Ningchen walked out. His white hair gradually returned to its black color. His face and aura were ordinary. Several months later, in the all-heaven starfield's Shumi Buddhist kingdom, Ningchen walked out. His white clothes fluttered in the wind, and his steps were steady. In the Buddhist kingdom, King Erin sensed his arrival. Her beautiful eyes opened. Looking at the plain-clothed man in front of her, she said, "You still came." Ningchen nodded. He looked at the mountain of prayer in the distance and said softly, "I want to go up the mountain again." King Erin looked at the person in front of her quietly. After a long time, she nodded and said, "Sure. Thank you." Ningchen saluted and walked towards the mountain of prayer in the west. On the mountain of prayer in the west of the Buddhist kingdom, an endless amount of faith power gathered. It was as majestic as the sea, shocking everyone. On this day, before the mountain of prayer, Ningchen walked up the Buddha mountain step by step. "It's been 1,000 years. You've finally come." On the Buddha mountain, faith power swirled and condensed into an enormous golden Buddha. It was over 10,000 feet tall. Its Buddhist light illuminated the entire Buddha mountain. "Buddha, please give me your guidance." Ningchen saluted respectfully. "The sea of people is vast. Even if she's truly reincarnated, you might not be able to find her. Even so, do you still want to search for her?" asked the Buddha. "Yes," answered Ningchen. 1,000 years in the mortal world, 10 reincarnations. Even if you find her, she won't recognize you. "Do you still want to search for her?" asked the Buddha. "Yes," answered Ningchen again. "Fool." The Buddha sighed and said, "In the northern part of the all-heaven, at the end of the starry sky, there's a region called the River of Forgetfulness. Similar flowers often bloom there. If you're fated to meet her, you might be able to meet her there." "Thank you." Hearing that, Ningchen saluted respectfully again and said, "Junior takes his leave." As Ningchen was about to leave, the Buddha spoke again. 1,000 years of waiting might only allow you to pass by her once in this lifetime. Is it worth it? "It's worth it," Ningchen replied calmly and walked down the mountain. Chapter 1327. At the end of the universe was an ancient star region that had been forgotten by the world. The River of Forgetfulness was an unfamiliar name that rarely appeared before humans. Perhaps it was because it was too remote. Compared to the famed star regions like the Purple Myrtle, Red Luan, and All Heavens, the River of Forgetfulness could only be seen once or twice in ancient records. On this day, a white-clothed figure strode over before the River of Forgetfulness star region. Her black hair danced in the wind, and she seemed no different from a mortal. Ningchen raised his hand, and a strange light rose up. Immediately, thin spiritual qi of the world gathered from all directions. The divergent yellow secret technique displayed its might once again. With Ningchen as the center, boundless spiritual qi of the world rapidly spread towards the various planets of life in the River of Forgetfulness star region. After searching for a long time, Ningchen dispersed the spiritual qi with a wave of his hand and continued onwards. Several days later, Ningchen appeared on a bustling planet. He looked at the countless mountains before him, and a strange light flashed through his eyes. There were not many planets of life like the great ancient martial stars. With sex as the foundation, There were hundreds of schools of thought. However, there were even more conflicts. He did not know where Xian Yu's next life was, so he could only search for her sect by sect. After a moment of thought, Ning Chen dismissed his thoughts and strode towards the nearest sect. The Ping Tian sect was a renowned martial arts sect on the great true martial planet. There were many fourth-level cultivators in the sect, and it was rumored that the sect had an ancestor who was infinitely close to King. Even within a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers, he could be considered a top expert. It was already extremely rare for a large sect that was so remote to possess such strength. At the very least, there was no doubt that they could dominate a region. A white-clothed figure strode over from below the Ping Tian sect. Her steps were steady as the light of divine restrictions rose up around her. It was difficult for ordinary people to see her. Formations flickered around the Ping Tian sect. At that moment, they were unable to stop knowing destiny. A few seconds later, Ning Chen walked over from the mountain. He glanced past all the disciples of the Ping Tian sect. After a long while, he sighed gently. She was not here. Ning Chen was already mentally prepared, so he was not too dejected. He made his way down the mountain. In just a few dozen seconds, no one in the Ping Tian sect sensed the arrival of knowing destiny, including the ancestor of the sect. Searching for a single person in a sea of people was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Ning Chen walked past the Ping Tian sect and continued to the second sect. True Martial Great Star was a vast planet with countless famous sects and sections. From this day on, Ning Chen spent half a year traveling through hundreds and thousands of sects, ancient cities, and villages in search of that familiar figure. 1,000 years ago, she was willing to exchange a lifetime of glory for 20 years of companionship, without any complaints or regrets. 1,000 years later, he was willing to use the last 100 years of his life to search for her, just to see her again. To the east of True Martial Great Planet, in the ancient city of 1,000 years old, Ning Chen's figure walked past. The chaos of war, the struggle, the parting of the world, he had seen too much. He had seen too much of it, but his heart had never let it go. Ta-ta! In the ancient city, the sound of horse hooves rapidly approached. Not long after, pedestrians rushed past in a panic. On the backs of the 10-odd cavalrymen, the soldiers were dressed in luxurious clothes that did not look like ordinary armor. When the cavalry arrived, Ning Chen stepped aside. He did not fight or snatch. In the center of the cavalry, there was a red-clothed woman riding a red horse. She was valiant and heroic, different from an ordinary young woman. It's the 9th princess. On the side of the street, as the common people saw the red-clothed woman on horseback, they began to discuss amongst themselves. The 9th princess has returned from studying martial arts. It is said that the 9th princess has entered Jixia Learning Palace. That is one of the top sects of True Martial Planet. No one dares to provoke her. On the side, as Ning Chen heard the words 9th princess, his body subconsciously shook. He looked at the woman in the center of the cavalry, a dazzling brilliance flashing in his eyes. In just a moment, Ning Chen's expression was restored to normal. He gently sighed in his heart. It wasn't her. At this time, the sound of reins sounded out from the center of the cavalry. The red-clothed woman stopped. She looked back, her expression solemn. At the same time, the cavalry also stopped. They looked at the woman. The leading general asked, "Princess, is something wrong?" The red-clothed woman swept her eyes over the crowd, her eyebrows furrowing together. Just now, she had clearly felt an extremely formidable strength, so why couldn't she sense it again? In the crowd, Ning Chen lowered his head, no longer looking at the woman. Since it wasn't her, then there was no need to interact with her anymore. On the horse, the red-clothed woman's gaze swept across the plain-clothed figure in the crowd. It only lingered for a moment before she shifted her gaze away. "It's nothing. Let's continue on our way." The red-clothed woman retracted her gaze and replied. Then she patted her warhorse and continued on her way. On both sides, the cavalry in charge of guarding also quickly followed and galloped away. In the crowd, Ning Chen looked at the backs of the cavalry. After thinking for a moment, he stepped forward and followed. This seemed to be the territory of the true martial dynasty. Since he was here, he might as well go and take a look. He also had to make a trip to Jixia Academy. In the east of the ancient city, the cavalry galloped in the direction of the true martial imperial city. Behind them, Ningchen followed unhurriedly, always maintaining a certain distance. The red-clothed woman and the cavalry did not notice that someone was following them at all. They were focused on their journey. In the west, as the sun set, the true martial imperial city came into view in the distance. It was grand and majestic, like a celestial palace, magnificent and extraordinary. An hour later, the red-clothed woman's group arrived in front of the city. They did not get off their horses, directly taking out the royal family's token and entering the city. Behind them, a strange light rose around Ning Chen's body, making his body invisible as he followed. He was the only person in the mortal realm who grasped both the time and space laws. Even if he lost his cultivation, he was still not someone ordinary people could compare to. Ning Chen walked into the true martial imperial city. The sky gradually darkened, and there were not many people left on the streets. Behind him, the gates of the imperial city closed with a rumble, and a curfew began. The strange light around Ning Chen dissipated, and his figure appeared. He walked on the street step by step, lonely and calm. After waiting for 1,000 years, today was finally the day. However, the sea of people was vast, and he could not find her. On this night, the night wind blew in the imperial city. The spirit chi of heaven and earth surged, spreading to every corner of the imperial city. In the true martial imperial city, an old man opened his eyes and looked at the changing winds and clouds in the imperial city. An expert entered the city. The old man stood up and took a step forward, disappearing. In the imperial city, Ning Chen circulated the Qi Yellow secret art, controlling the spirit Qi of heaven and earth to search for that familiar aura. However, after one night, he still did not find anything. Friend, why didn't you say hello when you came to the true martial imperial city? At this moment, golden light gathered in the void, and the old man walked out. He looked at the plain-clothed young man in front of him and said, "I'm looking for someone. I didn't mean to disturb you." "Sorry," Ning Chen said calmly. "Looking for someone?" A strange look flashed in the old man's eyes, and he said, "Who are you looking for?" "An old friend," Ning Chen said softly. "We've been separated for a long time. I don't know who she is now or where she is." "If that's the case, you're undoubtedly looking for a needle in a haystack," the old man said with a frown. Ning Chen smiled and did not say much. The old man sized up the young man in front of him without leaving a trace. He had a feeling that this person was very strong and unfathomable. However, he could not feel the slightest fluctuation of true qi from this person. It was really strange. Tomorrow, the imperial emperor will hold a welcoming dinner for the 9th princess in the palace. At that time, many nobles and influential figures of the great sex will attend. "I wonder if you can do me the honor and come as a guest," the old man invited politely. "I'll leave tomorrow, so I won't disturb you," Ning Chen declined tactfully. "Even if you're looking for someone, one day won't make a difference. Tomorrow, Jixia Academy and many top sects will send famous figures to congratulate you. It's a rare opportunity. You might be able to get the information you want," the old man advised. Ning Chen was silent for a moment before saying, "In that case, I'll have to trouble you. It's the Zhen Wu dynasty's honor." The old man waved his hand, and a golden token flew out. "With this token, you can enter and leave the palace freely. No one will dare to stop you." "Thank you." Ning Chen took the token and thanked him. "I'll be in the palace, waiting for your arrival." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man's figure faded and disappeared in an instant. Ning Chen looked at the golden token in his hand, and his eyes narrowed slightly. The Zhen Wu dynasty and Jixia Academy had half-step imperial Dao inheritances. They were indeed extraordinary. In the east, the morning sun rose, and the morning light shone on the ground, dispelling the coldness of the night. Ning Chen collected his thoughts and walked toward the palace. In the true martial hall of the palace, the 9th princess, the brightest pearl of the dynasty, had returned after completing her studies. Imperial Lord Zhen Wu had invited all the heroes in the world to welcome the 9th princess. The banquet had been set up since dawn. Silk, satin, gold, and jade artifacts were all luxurious. When the morning sun rose in the east, guests arrived one after another. The nobles of the royal family, the grand elders of the large sects, and the consecrators of the aristocratic clans were all there. All of them had shocking statuses and cultivations. The servants and maids in the hall didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They knew that the guests today were all very noble. If they were negligent, their lives would definitely be in danger. Not long after, the various powerhouses had arrived in the true martial hall. The banquet was about to begin. Imperial Lord Zhenwu was about to speak when he was stopped by a voice in front of the dragon throne. Wait a little longer. There's still an esteemed guest who hasn't arrived. The old man in the main seat sent a voice transmission. Imperial Lord Zhenwu was puzzled when he heard that. He replied, "Everyone is here. Who else is missing?" Before he finished speaking, a plain-clothed figure walked over from the end of the stone steps outside the true martial hall. He looked so ordinary that one couldn't sense any aura of an expert. "He's here." The old man in the main seat stood up and welcomed the newcomer personally. The true martial dynasty's high priest's actions surprised everyone present. When they saw the youth walking in from outside the hall, they revealed strange expressions. What's so special about this person that High Priest Zhenwu came to welcome him personally? "You're finally here. This way, please," the old man said politely. "Thank you." Ningchen stepped forward and followed the old man to the seats in front of him. In front of everyone, a table was placed next to the old man's seat to welcome the host. "Imperial Lord, we can begin." Now that everyone was here, the old man sent a voice transmission to Imperial Lord Zhenwu, who was sitting on the dragon throne. Imperial Lord Zhenwu nodded. He looked at the servant beside him and said, "Summon the 9th princess into the hall." Under the emperor's order and everyone's gazes, a beautiful woman dressed in splendid clothes walked in from outside the palace. Her gorgeous appearance was even more stunning under the reflection of her splendid clothes. Chapter 1328. The heroes of the world gathered in the true martial hall. Countless delicacies were placed on the table. It was extremely luxurious. At the head of the banquet, Ningchen sat quietly beside High Priest Zhenwu. He had not said a word since he sat down. In the hall, 9th Princess Chen Hongmian toasted the guests one by one. Her devastatingly beautiful face was undoubtedly the focus of everyone. Not long after, Chen Hongmian raised her cup and came to the head of the table. She asked softly, "Young master, how should I address you?" "Ningchen." Ningchen raised his cup and replied calmly, "Young master Ning, please." Chen Hongmian covered her face and drank all the wine in her cup. Then, she placed it on the tray in the hands of the maidservant beside her and walked over with a smile. Ningchen put down his wine cup and looked at the woman in front of him with a complicated gaze. Back then, she had also been so beautiful. Unfortunately, she was not her. Opposite him, Chen Hongmian felt the gaze behind her, and her heart stirred slightly. She seemed to have seen this person before. "How is the princess of my dynasty?" High Priest Zhenwu suddenly asked from beside Ningchen. "Her aptitude is excellent. Not bad." Ningchen evaluated truthfully. "Is she worthy of being your disciple?" High Priest Zhenwu asked again. Ningchen looked at the old man beside him and said calmly, "I don't accept disciples. She's just an in-name disciple. It won't affect you at all. Moreover, the 9th princess is the favorite child of our dynasty's royal lord. In the future, she might even become the first empress of the Zhenwu dynasty. You will definitely not regret this good karma," High Priest Zhenwu said seriously. Ningchen frowned slightly and looked at the old man. After a few breaths, he said calmly, "The Zhenwu dynasty has you, a half-step Imperial Dao High Priest, holding down the fort and the help of Jixia Academy. Why do you need to rope in an outsider like me?" High Priest Zhenwu was silent for a long time before he sighed softly and said, "To tell you the truth, not long ago, the old master of Jixia Academy issued a warning that there will be a drastic change in the world. I'm worried that with my strength, I won't be able to protect this huge dynasty." Ningchen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Old master?" The drastic change in the world was a secret even in the crepe myrtle divine realm. How did this old master know about it? Can I meet the old master that the high priest mentioned? Ningchen said after a slight ponder. High priest Zhen Wu was startled when he heard this. Then he revealed a troubled expression. If it's too difficult, then forget it. Ningchen didn't want to make things difficult for him. It's not that difficult. The Zhenwu dynasty and Jixia Academy have always been on good terms. It's just that in the past 100 years, Old Master rarely sees outsiders. Even if His Majesty comes personally, Old Master might not appear to meet him. Speaking to hear, High Priest Zhen Wu looked at the plain-clothed youth beside him and earnestly said, I can introduce you to him. But I cannot guarantee whether or not this old man will meet him. Thank you, Ningchen said politely. What about the matter of Your Excellency taking the 9th princess as a registered disciple? High Priest Zhen Wu asked with an expectant look in his eyes. Ningchen said helplessly, Sure. On the dragon throne, Imperial Lord True Marshal stared at the two of them. At this moment, he couldn't help but frown. What was wrong with the high priest today? Why was she so concerned about this young man? Opposite the banquet, the leader of the world's major sects, a woman in a white palace robe sat quietly. She was extremely beautiful and wasn't inferior to the 9th princess. Jixia Academy's 3rd sect master was a half-step emperor. She was one of the top experts on the entire Zhenwu Great Planet. 3rd sect master, please. Chen Hongmian raised his cup and said respectfully. The woman in the palace robe nodded. She raised her cup and drank all the wine in it. Then, she silently put it down and didn't say anything. The 9th princess toasted, and the banquet proceeded amidst toasting and toasting. Everyone present was a powerhouse. They deliberately befriended each other, so the atmosphere in the hall was rather harmonious. Beside High Priest Zhen Wu, Ningchen quietly drank the wine in his cup. He didn't deliberately befriend anyone, nor did he reject anyone's good intentions. Your Majesty! At the head of the table, High Priest Zhen Wu sent a voice transmission and informed Imperial Lord True Marshal of his decision. When Imperial Lord True Marshal heard this, his expression changed. He said in disbelief, High Priest, why do you think so highly of this person? I can't sense any quintessential energy fluctuations in his body. Could it be that this person has a special identity? Your Majesty, you made a mistake this time. This person is at least an Emperor Supreme expert, High Priest Zhen Wu said with a serious expression. I don't know why there are no quintessential energy fluctuations in his body at all. However, this person can control the spirit energy of heaven and earth to the microscopic level. Even I can't do that. Imperial Lord True Marshal's eyes narrowed slightly. There was actually such a thing? Imperial Lord, we can't hesitate on this matter. It's not easy to obtain such an expert, High Priest Zhen Wu said in a deep voice. We'll do as you say, High Priest, Imperial Lord True Marshal said with a nod. The Imperial Lord nodded. High Priest Zhen Wu heaved a sigh of relief. He was really worried that the Imperial Lord would disagree with his decision. Mr. Ning was too important to the True Marshal dynasty. There were only a handful of Emperor Supreme experts in the entire human race. If the True Marshal dynasty obtained one of them, even if the upheaval of the world in the future was real, they might be able to safely survive it. Hongmian. After 3 rounds of wine, Imperial Lord True Marshal stood up from his dragon throne and spoke. Father, what are your orders? Chen Hongmian stood up and bowed. Mr. Ning is an esteemed guest of our dynasty. Just now, the High Priest discussed with Mr. Ning. Mr. Ning agreed to accept you as an in-name disciple, Imperial Lord True Marshal said seriously. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone present was shocked. They looked at the plain-clothed young man beside High Priest Zhen Wu. Just now, they were puzzled. What was the background of this person who could make High Priest Zhen Wu personally welcome him? Now, Imperial Lord True Marshal actually wanted his most beloved 9th princess to become his disciple. Moreover, it was only an in-name disciple. It was really strange. In the middle of True Marshal Hall, Chen Hongmian was also shocked. He didn't expect his father to make such an arrangement. At the head of the various large sex seats, the woman in palatial attire from Jixia Academy glanced at the plain-clothed figure opposite her. At this moment, she became serious. Did she make an error in judgment? Hong Mian. On the dragon throne, Imperial Lord True Marshal continued, "Hurry up and toast your master." Chen Hongmian snapped back to his senses. He raised his cup and walked to the head of the seats again. With a complicated expression, he said, "Greetings, master." Ningchen stood up and smiled. "I won't let you call me master for nothing." With that said, Ningchen took the cup of wine and finished it in one gulp. In the hall, the various magnates looked at the man in front of them with increasingly grave expressions. Perhaps they had really made an error in judgment this time. After the brief interlude of the ninth princess becoming Ji Ming's disciple, the various magnates in the hall all focused on Ji Ming. They beat around the bush and tried to find out about his identity. Ningchen smiled and responded to them one by one, not rejecting any of them. However, even when the banquet was about to end, the various magnates still couldn't get anything out of him. They were extremely helpless. After the banquet, everyone left with their own thoughts. Knowing Destiny's appearance was out of everyone's expectation. "Fairy Qing, please wait." After everyone left, High Priest Jinwu called out to Jixia Academy's third headmaster, who was also about to leave. He sternly said, "Mr. Ning wishes to meet Old Master. I wonder if Jixia Academy can accommodate him?" Fairy Qing stopped and looked at High Priest Jinwu. "High Priest, you should know the rules of Jixia Academy. I won't meet anyone now, even if they are recommended by the royal family." High Priest Jinwu's expression turned a little ugly. He looked at the man beside him and said, "Mr. Ning, I might really not be able to help you." Ningchen smiled and said, "It's fine." After he finished speaking, Ningchen looked at Chen Hongmian and said, "Ninth princess, come with me." Chen Hongmian was stunned. After a while, she came back to her senses and looked at her father, who was sitting on the dragon throne. Imperial Lord Jinwu nodded and told her to wait for his instructions. Chen Hongmian bit her lip and turned to follow. Behind her, High Priest Jinwu and Fairy Qing had different expressions as they walked out of the hall together. Outside True Martial Hall, Ningchen looked at the girl behind him and said, "Palm, saber, sword. What do you want to learn?" "Sword." Chen Hongmian replied without hesitation. "Sword?" Ningchen murmured softly. He looked at the palace and said, "It's not convenient here. Let's go somewhere else." As soon as he said that, spirit chi surged around Ningchen. He brought Chen Hongmian with him and flew into the distance. Behind them, High Priest Jinwu and Fairy Qing were shocked when they saw this. Their figures flashed as they immediately followed. 300 miles north of the imperial city, the great river stretched for tens of thousands of miles without end. A few seconds later, the space in front of the great river stirred. Two figures walked out. The man in front was dressed in white. His expression was as calm as autumn water, without any ripples. Chen Hongmian could not hide the shock in her heart. At this moment, she no longer dared to underestimate the man in front of her. "Watch carefully. I will only teach you once," Ningchen said calmly. He took a step forward and clenched his right hand. In the rapidly twisting space, a purple divine sword appeared out of thin air. Ningchen raised his hand to hold the sword. Sword light rose rapidly around him. Sword intent filled the air as he slashed down from the sky. It was an ordinary slash, but it had the power to steal the creation of heaven and earth. In front of him, the great river suddenly split apart. Raging waves surged and swept the 9 heavens. After that slash, the divine sword in Ning Chen's hand disappeared. The sword light around him also disappeared. Behind him, Chen Hongmian stared at the river in a daze. She was completely dazed. In the distance, High Priest Jinwu and Fairy Qing, who were rushing over, also saw that earth-shattering slash. They were extremely shocked. "Mr. Ning." The two of them stopped and bowed respectfully. If they were not sure before, at this moment, they were sure that this Mr. Ning was definitely an Emperor Dao Paragon expert. On the path of martial arts, the one who reached the top was first. This person deserved to be addressed as Mr. Ning Chen smiled faintly and said, "The 9th princess might stay here for a while. High Priest, stay behind to protect her. As for Fairy Qing, can you bring me to Jixia Academy?" High Priest Zhen Wu and Fairy Qing looked at each other and accepted the order. Just as Ning Chen was about to visit Jixia Academy, in a simple wooden house inside Jixia Academy, a hunchbacked old man turned his head and looked into the distance. His turbid eyes flashed with a rare clarity. Is it finally here? The Crepe Myrtle Realm Lord, the strongest person in the world. Chapter 1329. In the east of the Zhenwu dynasty, Jixia Academy was the cradle of the Zhenwu continent's martial cultivators. On this day, Ning Chen appeared in front of Jixia Academy and came to pay his respects. Fairy Qing was beside Ning Chen, leading the way personally. Once the news spread, it immediately spread throughout Jixia Academy. Inside the academy, a male and a female half-step emperors heard the news. They opened their eyes, and a strange look flashed across their faces. In this world, there were very few people who could be accompanied by Fairy Qing personally. Even Imperial Lord Zhen Wu did not receive such treatment. Who was this person? He used to be the ruler of the mortal world. At this moment, Old Master walked out and bowed respectfully. Jiang Hua greets the Crepe Myrtle Realm Lord. Old Master's voice was hoarse and heavy. It was like thunder, ringing in everyone's ears. Ning Chen stopped beside Fairy Qing and looked at the old man in front of him. He smiled and said, "No need to be so polite. I am no longer the ruler of the godly realm." Ning Chen's reply once again set off waves of shock in everyone's hearts. At this moment, the Jixia Academy elites were finally certain that this young man who looked no different from a mortal before them was the legendary invincible Ziwei Realm Lord. He had single-handedly turned the tide of the battle between the human and demon realms. He was almost a legend in the mortal world. Greetings, Crepe Myrtle Realm Lord. After a moment of silence, everyone present bowed in unison, welcoming the arrival of the ruler of the mortal world. Ning Chen smiled and said, "Get up. Old Master Jiang, I have some questions to ask. Can we talk in private?" "Realm Lord, please follow me." Old Master responded and immediately led the way, walking toward the wooden house not far away. Behind them, the Jixia Academy cultivators looked at their backs, unable to suppress the waves in their hearts for a long time. The ruler of the mortal world. Such an identity made them tremble with fear. "Fairy Qing, you've really given us a huge surprise." In Jixia Academy, a male and a female half-step Renhuang looked at the woman beside them and smiled bitterly. Fairy Qing came back to her senses, and her gaze was extremely complicated. She replied softly, "I only just found out. Today's news must be kept a secret. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable if we anger the ruler of the godly realm," the female half-step emperors said sternly. "Yes." The man nodded and ordered in a deep voice, "Listen carefully. Today, everything you see and hear will rot in your stomachs. Whoever dares to reveal half a word will not be easily forgiven." Everyone acknowledged the order and bowed their heads. In the northwest wind of Jixia Academy, in an inconspicuous wooden house, the #1 person of true martial great planet, the ruler of the mortal world, two peak powerhouses of the current era, met. The scene was strangely peaceful. Like meeting an old friend, the old master no longer cared about the identity of the person in front of the ceremony. He began to organize the ancient books on the table. At the side, Ning Chen wasn't in a hurry. He waited quietly. About an hour later, the old master finished tidying up the books. He looked up at the man in front of him and said hoarsely, "Is the domain master here because of the changes in the world?" "Not bad." Ning Chen nodded and said, "The world is about to undergo a great change. This matter involves too many things. Therefore, 900 years ago, I already gave the order to seal off the news. How did you find out?" "Greetings, God Fiend," Old Master said. Ning Chen's expression sank when he heard this. "Where?" 900 years ago, not long after the defeat of the demon realm, 100,000-foot-tall God Fiend appeared briefly in the east of the Wangchuan star zone. I only saw it from afar and felt a threat to my life. When I came back to my senses, the God Fiend had already disappeared. Only a few spatial cracks that extended for tens of thousands of miles were left behind, the Old Master said. Ning Chen's expression darkened. This was not good. God fiends had already descended to the mortal world. Why did it happen so early? Didn't the moon goddess say that there were still thousands or even tens of thousands of years before the god fiend would descend to the mortal world? I can see that the domain master's aura has no true essence fluctuations. You are no different from a mortal. Is this the aftereffect of the first demon slayer battle 900 years ago? The old master asked. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and didn't hide anything. He said, my cultivation has basically dissipated more than 100 years ago. My current state, whether it's my body or my lifespan, is not much different from a mortal. Therefore, if the god fiend really descends, I can't do anything. It's the will of the heavens. The old master sighed softly. Disasters continued to befall the mortal world, and it was no longer something that could be stopped by humans. Even the former ruler of the mortal world couldn't protect the peace of the human race forever. How long have I been here? Ning Chen asked softly. 1,000 years, maybe even longer. I can't remember, the old master replied. Ask me about a person. Ning Chen flipped his right hand, and a portrait appeared. The portrait unfolded, and a beautiful figure was reflected in it. The woman in the portrait was very lifelike. Every strand of her hair was drawn very vividly. It was as if a beauty was by his side, making him miss her even more. The old master looked at the portrait and narrowed his eyes slightly. A person from 1,000 years ago? The material of the portrait had obviously begun to change. It seemed to be at least 1,000 years old. Have you ever seen the woman in the portrait? Ning Chen asked in a serious tone. No. The old master shook his head. The woman in the portrait was more beautiful than flowers. Even if she was 50% similar, she would still be famous throughout the Zhenwu continent. Ning Chen sighed in his heart and put away the portrait. Although he was already prepared, he still couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. How long will the domain master stay here? The old master asked. 3 days, Ning Chen replied. I've taken in the Zhenwu dynasty's 9th princess as my in-name disciple. I have to fulfill my responsibility as a teacher. The old master nodded and said, this woman's potential is not bad. To be able to receive guidance from the domain master, her future is limitless. Ning Chen smiled faintly and said, a teacher can only lead the way. Cultivation is up to the individual. What I can do is limited. I have to walk my own path. Outside the wooden house, while the two were talking, the 3 Jixia Academy headmasters and more than 10 teachers had all gathered and were waiting outside. Not long after, the wooden house's door opened. Ning Chen walked out and saw the people waiting outside. He smiled and said, what's the matter? The Jixia Academy headmaster said respectfully, the domain master is new to the Zhenwu Great Planet and might not be familiar with this place. Why don't you let Fairy Qing accompany you? Where would you like to go? Fairy Qing can guide you. I appreciate your kindness, but I've finished my business here and will leave soon. I won't trouble you. Everyone, see you later. Ning Chen said with a smile. Then the spirit energy vortex around his body started to surge rapidly. His figure submerged into the void in an instant and disappeared from sight. When the people of Jixia Academy saw this, they were shocked. What kind of mystical ability was that? Everyone, return to where you should go. The old master's voice came from inside the wooden house. Everyone came back to their senses, suppressed the waves in their hearts, and respectfully accepted the order. In front of the Zhenwu dynasty's northern river, Ning Chen walked out and looked at Qin Hongmian, who had been standing quietly in front of him for a long time. He did not disturb him. Less than 1,000 feet away from Qin Hongmian, High Priest Zhenwu was on full alert, guarding the former. After some time, High Priest Zhenwu's body suddenly trembled. He looked into the distance with a shocked expression. When did this Mr. Ning come? Seeing High Priest Zhenwu look over, Ning Chen smiled and nodded in greeting. High Priest Zhenwu stepped forward and bowed. Mr. Ning. Ning Chen nodded and said, wait here. The longer the 9th princess comprehends the Tao, the more helpful it will be for her growth. The Zhenwu dynasty will remember Mr. Ning's kindness, High Priest Zhenwu said respectfully. You're welcome. Ning Chen responded and asked, When I came, I roughly checked the entire Forgotten River star field, but I only felt very few life auras. This Jinwu great planet is already full of life. Could it be that there are so few great planets with life in the Forgotten River star field? Mr. Ning doesn't know. High Priest Jinwu said seriously, in the Forgotten River star field, there are a total of 3 great planets with life. Jinwu Great Planet is ranked second. On the 3rd great planet, the human race has just begun to develop and martial arts have yet to appear. However, due to its remote location, it is quite peaceful. As for the 1st great planet with life, it is in the center of the Forgotten River star field. The name of this great planet is the River of Forgetfulness. Martial arts flourishes there, and the area is very vast. Ningchen nodded slightly after hearing this. With this, his goal was even more clear. 1,000 feet away, above a great river, raging waves tumbled about. Chen Hongmian stood in the midst of the raging waves, her divine sense constantly reflecting that heaven-shaking sword strike. 1 day, 2 days, on the 3rd day, as the sun rose from the east, Chen Hongmian's eyes flashed open. Her slender hands grasped the air and her sword left its scabbard. The vermilion sword fell into Chen Hongmian's hand. She grasped the sword and slashed downwards. In the distance, Ningchen looked at this sword strike and nodded in satisfaction. His figure sank into the void as he left Jinwu Great Planet. Bang! Below, the sword split open the great river. 3,000 miles of raging waves were split apart. Honorable Master! Chen Hongmian excitedly regained her senses. She wanted to find that familiar figure, but she could no longer see him. In the starry space, a white-clothed figure hurtled past, hurrying deep into the Forgotten River star field. As High Priest Jinwu said, the Forgotten River star field only had 3 great planets with life. That Xuanyu's reincarnation was likely on this Forgotten River star. As Ningchen was hurrying towards the Forgotten River star field, in a corner of the Forgotten River star field, on a great planet that had been forgotten by the world, humans lived in peace and contentment. There were very few disputes. This was a world that could be called a paradise. On this day, strong winds blew through the starry space. Dark clouds swirled and a terrifying pressure fell down from the heavens, covering the entire great planet. On the great planet, all humans revealed looks of panic. They looked towards the horizon. Above the great planet, in the starry space, a 100,000-foot-tall, unrivaled divinity demon stood in the air. Its terrifying aura caused one to shiver. When the divinity demon appeared, its eyes looked towards the great planet in front of it. It lifted its right hand and a terrifying divine pressure came pressing down. In the next moment, on the great planet, millions of blood mists exploded. The source of life scattered, endlessly spreading into the starry space. In just several breaths of time, the great planet was covered in a rain of blood. The great planet that was filled with life a moment ago immediately turned into a living hell. This shocking scene caused one's hair to stand on end. After several breaths of time, the divinity demon left, vanishing from sight. Chapter 1330. In the starry sky of the River of Forgetfulness, space runes flickered as a silhouette flashed through the space nodes. Her speed was unbelievable. She was the only one who had completed the divine restriction. A few days later, in the depths of the starry sky, Ningchen appeared in front of the vast star of the River of Forgetfulness. It was the largest star of life in the River of Forgetfulness starry sky. It had existed since time immemorial and had experienced the great changes of the ancient world. After observing for a while, Ningchen flew towards the vast star in front of him. It was a truly vast and boundless continent. It spanned more than 1,000,000 miles from east to west. Ningchen stood quietly on the land of the River of Forgetfulness. The spiritual qi around him surged rapidly and spread in all directions. The ruler of the human world, the strongest human martial artist in the past 1,000 years, had appeared again. Heaven and earth were under his command. Endless spiritual qi spread out to search for that similar figure. On the vast, desolate land, Ningchen closed his eyes. In his consciousness, the faces of everyone within 1,000 miles were constantly reflected. An hour later, Ning Chen's silhouette disappeared. He flew towards the next area. 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles, 100,000 miles. As the days passed, Ning Chen gradually walked through half of the river of forgetfulness. However, he still couldn't find that familiar figure. In the east of the river of forgetfulness, Ning Chen walked over. He looked into the distance and continued to search. After walking through thousands of mountains and rivers and waiting for 1,000 years, Ning Chen didn't know what it meant to give up. He would use the last of his strength to find her. 100,000 miles away, in a small ancient city, people came and went. It wasn't bustling, but it wasn't deserted either. On the streets of the ancient city, in front of a small medicine shop, a woman in coarse clothes walked over. Her face was covered by a veil, so her appearance couldn't be seen clearly. "Hey girl, you're here to get medicine for your father again." Behind the counter, the shopkeeper of the medicine shop smiled when he saw her. "Yes." The woman nodded and said softly, "Father's cough is acting up again. I'm here to get some medicine." Hearing that, the shopkeeper sighed softly and said, "Your father's illness has been around for many years." As he spoke, the shopkeeper turned around and opened 3 drawers. He grabbed a few coins of medicine from each drawer and wrapped them together. "Once a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. Cook it slowly. Do you remember?" The shopkeeper reminded her seriously. "Yes, I remember." The woman nodded and took the medicine. After paying, she turned around and walked out of the medicine shop. On the streets, pedestrians walked past from time to time. The woman carried the medicinal herbs and walked towards a corner of the ancient city. On the east side of the ancient city, where the commoners gathered, there were almost no wealthy families. Life was plain and peaceful. Cough, cough. In an inconspicuous small courtyard, a white-haired old man coughed as he weaved a bamboo basket. The craftsmanship that ordinary people relied on to survive barely supported the father and daughter. In front of the small courtyard, a woman walked over. Seeing her father working in the courtyard, she quickly stepped forward and stopped him. "Father, leave this work to me. You should go inside and lie down. It's almost done." A smile appeared on the old man's face as he said, "Xiao He, just now Wang Pa from next door came again. This time, the marriage she arranged for you sounds pretty good. It's a scholar from a wealthy family. If you marry over, you won't have to suffer with your father anymore." The woman was silent. She took the work from her father's hands and softly said, "I don't want to marry." When the old man heard this, he sighed and said, "Daughter, you're not young anymore. In the end, you still have to get married. You're the only daughter I have in my life. If I can't arrange a good home for you, how can I meet your mother? Father's illness will be cured." The woman said with certainty, "Father knows his own body best. He won't get better." The old man sighed again and said, "How about this? I'll help you find out what kind of person this scholar Wang is. If he's a good person, I'll agree." The woman silently put down the herbs in her hands. She didn't refuse, but she didn't agree either. In the evening, the woman went into the house to boil the medicine. When there was no one around, she put down her veil. The flickering light reflected a gorgeous face. The old man went out for half a day to find out about this scholar Wang from Wangpa. When he came back, his face was unusually ugly. Seeing this, the woman walked out of the house and asked in confusion, "What's wrong with you?" "Father. Xiao He, we're not getting married." The old man couldn't hide his anger and said, "That scholar Wang is an ignorant and incompetent person. He hangs around in brothels all day long. I don't know how he became a scholar." The woman nodded and said, "Then we're not getting married. Father, don't be angry. Let's go back to the house and prepare to drink the medicine." "It's been hard on you, my daughter," the old man said with shame. The woman smiled and said, "It's not hard. I don't have to marry. Ordinary people led a simple life. Perhaps it was hard, but they had their own happiness." After the old man drank the medicine, he went to bed early. The woman cleared the table and prepared to rest as well. At this moment, a fire appeared outside the small courtyard. Several servants walked in with torches in their hands. Behind them, a pale young man in a long robe followed. He looked unusually cold. "Bring her out and burn the courtyard," the young man said in a low voice. Yes. 4 or 5 servants broke the door and walked quickly to the wooden house in front. In the house, the woman heard the noise outside and immediately put on her veil and went out to see what was going on. What are you doing? Seeing the servants outside with torches in their hands, the woman was shocked and asked, What are we doing? Behind them, the young man in a long robe walked out and said coldly, Come back with me and you'll know what to do. What are you waiting for? Take her away and burn. Yes, young master. 2 servants grabbed the woman's arm and dragged her out of the courtyard. 3 servants were left behind to lock the door. Then, they started to burn the courtyard. In the courtyard, there were bamboo baskets. Soon, the small courtyard and the house were all on fire. Waves of fire soared into the sky and lit up the ancient city. Father! The woman shouted and struggled. However, how could a woman's strength be compared to a man's? The 2 servants forcefully pulled the woman, making it difficult for her to break free. Under the blazing fire, the veil on the woman's face fell. Her beautiful face was filled with tears. That old woman didn't lie to me. She is indeed a beautiful woman. When the young man in a long robe saw the woman's appearance, his eyes lit up. Such coarse clothes without any decorations were already so beautiful. If there were red flowers, how beautiful would it be? From now on, you will follow me. The young man in a long robe became happier as he thought about it. He laughed loudly. Under the light of the fire, the ruthlessness that disregarded human life even more set off the sorrow of the weak. At this moment, no one noticed that at the end of the darkness, a plain-clothed figure appeared silently. He looked at the woman in front of him. His eyes that had been calm for thousands of years moved for the first time. In the next moment, the entire ancient city was filled with strong winds. Dark clouds gathered and heavy rain poured down. Under the rain, the plain-clothed figure stepped forward. Under the shocked gaze of everyone, he reached out and touched the woman's teary face. He said softly, Don't cry. Chapter 1331. In the ancient city, the heavy rain extinguished the fire. Under the heavy rain, knowing destiny appeared. His white robe was spotless. Don't cry. Ningchen raised his hand to wipe away the tears on the girl's face. Xiaohe was slightly stunned. Looking at the strange man in front of her, she didn't know why she couldn't resist. Not far away, the long-robed young man came back to his senses and said angrily, Capture this person for me. The 5 servants immediately went forward to capture him. Evil master, evil slave. Murder and arson. Unpardonable. Ningchen turned around. His eyes gradually turned cold. His body moved, and with a clean punch and kick, he broke the meridians of the 6 people. Fear and unwillingness. The moment the 6 people fell, their eyes were filled with shock. On the side, Xiaohe trembled. She looked at the man beside her in disbelief and said, You killed them? Are you scared? Ningchen turned around and asked softly. Xiaohe shook her head and said, No. Ningchen showed a gentle smile. Looking at the burned courtyard in front of him, he said, Is there anything here that you miss? Xiaohe was silent. She stepped forward and knelt down. Your daughter is unfilial. Xiaohe murmured softly. Tears fell from her eyes again. Her heart was filled with pain. Behind her, Ningchen stood quietly and waited. After a long time, Xiaohe stood up and looked at the man in plain clothes. She said, How should I address you? Ningchen replied softly. I am Xiaohe. Thank you for saving me. Xiaohe knelt down and said respectfully. Ningchen went forward and helped the girl up. He said gently, You don't need to say thank you to me. Close by, Xiaohe looked at the man in front of her and said, Young Master Ning, have we met before? Why did she feel that the person in front of her was familiar, as if they had met a long time ago? Yes. Ningchen smiled. A long time ago. After 1,000 years, he finally found her. I don't remember. Xiaohe said with an ashamed look on his face. It's okay. Let bygones be bygones. Ningchen said softly, Let's leave here first. The soldiers will be here soon. Xia He nodded and replied obediently. Ning Chen smiled and left with the woman beside him. Not far away, in front of an inn, the two of them walked over. Ning Chen asked for 2 adjacent rooms and brought Xia He upstairs. Go in and change your clothes. Be careful not to catch a cold. Ning Chen instructed as he escorted Xia He to her room. The same goes for young master. Xia He nodded and replied softly. Then, she silently returned to her room. Ning Chen stood there quietly for a moment, then turned around and went back to his room. The rooms next to each other were connected to 2 similar hearts. After changing out of her wet clothes, Xia He sat on the bed in a daze. A single night of upheaval had caused this strong woman to almost collapse. If Ning Chen hadn't appeared in time, the consequences would have been even more difficult to predict. Tears dripped down, wetting the blanket. Xia He buried her head in her knees, sobbing softly. In the adjacent room, Ning Chen sat in front of the table. Listening to the soft sobbing sounds coming from the next room, he sighed softly in his heart. The pain of losing her family was not something that could be easily erased. She could only wait for time to slowly heal the pain in her heart. In this life, perhaps she was no longer a princess and had become much weaker. After tearing away the outer layer of strength, she was so fragile that it made one's heart ache. In the city after the fire, all the soldiers were mobilized and sealed off the entire city. In front of a small courtyard that had been burned to ashes, an old figure trembled as he looked at the 6 people lying in a pool of blood. He weakly knelt down. Beside him, a middle-aged man in court attire said with a gloomy expression, "Old Lord, don't worry. This official will definitely help you catch the culprit." He knew what kind of power this old man beside him had in the Great Kang dynasty. He had to catch the culprit as soon as possible and give this old man an explanation. The dark night passed and the day arrived. The rain also gradually stopped. In the inn in the city, when the sun rose, Ning Chen opened the door of his room. The door of the adjacent room also opened at the same time. Xia He was clearly startled when she saw this. "Are you hungry? Let's go downstairs and eat something." Ning Chen smiled warmly and said, "En." Xia He nodded lightly. Ning Chen walked in front and went downstairs. Xia He quietly followed behind him. Her thoughts were in a mess and she couldn't calm down. On the first floor, Ning Chen suddenly stopped and smiled. Ah! Behind them, Xia He didn't expect Ning Chen to suddenly stop and bump into her. She couldn't help but exclaim softly. Ning Chen turned around and supported the girl who was standing unsteadily in front of him. He smiled and said, "Does it hurt?" Seeing the smile on Ning Chen's face, Xia He could tell that he did it on purpose. Her eyes reddened, but she held back her tears. "Don't cry." Ning Chen reached out and wiped away the tears in the girl's eyes. He gently said, "I'm just teasing you. Such a beautiful face can't be sad all day. It will become ugly." On the first floor, many people looked over. When they saw Xia He's tear-stained face, they were all slightly dazed. Feeling everyone's gaze, Xia He immediately panicked and subconsciously covered her face. "It's okay. Don't be afraid." Ning Chen reached out and pulled down Xia He's arm. He smiled and said, "Let's eat first." At a nearby table, Ning Chen pulled Xia He to sit down and ordered some simple and light dishes. The dishes were quickly served. Under everyone's gaze, Xia He fidgeted as she ate. Ning Chen smiled and gave some vegetables to the girl beside him. He said, "Eat more. I can eat by myself." Xia He lowered her head and said softly. Hearing this, Ning Chen's smile grew wider. This girl was really shy. Ning Chen barely ate a single bite of the simple meal. He kept putting food into Xia He's bowl with a smile on his face. He was gentle and irresistible. "I can't eat any more." After a long time, Xia He put down her bowl and chopsticks and said softly, "Are you full?" Ning Chen asked. Xia He nodded. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito. "Since you're full, let's go," Ning Chen suggested. "Where are we going?" Xia He raised her head and asked. "Do you have a place you want to go?" Ning Chen smiled. Xia He raised her head and thought for a moment. She shook her head and said, "No." "Then come with me first. When you think of a place, I'll go with you." Is that okay? Ningchen asked. Xiaohe replied softly. Ningchen smiled and said, Xiaohe? Xiaohe raised her head, puzzled. In the future, I'll protect you. Ningchen's smile was filled with determination. Xiaohe was stunned. Her eyes reddened again and she quickly lowered her head. Men, surround them. At this moment, outside the inn, a group of soldiers arrived and surrounded the entire inn. A middle-aged man in court attire walked out from the group of soldiers. He looked at the two people in the inn and said coldly, Capture them. If they resist, kill them. Behind him, a group of soldiers received the order and immediately rushed into the inn. Inside the inn, Xiaohe saw the soldiers rushing in. She said anxiously, Young master, leave quickly. Ningchen stood up. His expression was cold. These guys were really disappointing. He had waited for 1,000 years, not for these annoying flies. Xiaohe. Ningchen grabbed the girl's wrist and said softly, Do you see the back door over there? I'll count to 3 and we'll run there. Do you hear me? Xiaohe suppressed the panic in her heart and nodded. 1, 2, 3. Ningchen counted to 3 and pulled the girl beside him. They immediately ran towards the back door of the inn. Bang! Before the crowd could react, Ningchen kicked open the back door and ran out with Xiaohe. Stop them! In front of the gate, the middle-aged man shouted angrily. The soldiers around the inn came back to their senses and immediately rushed to the back door. At the back door, Ningchen quickly dealt with the soldiers blocking his way and rushed out with Xiaohe. On the streets of the ancient city, a man and a woman were running with all their might. Behind them, hundreds of soldiers were chasing after them. The indescribable scene shocked all the people. Xiaohe, who was almost being dragged away, looked at the man in front of her. At this moment, the panic in her heart gradually calmed down. A gentle look flashed across her beautiful face. Hold on to me. Ningchen turned around and glanced at Xiaohe as he said softly. Xiaohe nodded vigorously and smiled. In an instant, flowers bloomed all over the city. She was even more beautiful than the flowers. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.